All right, dude. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah.
This is episode 3 of the Blake Chancey podcast. We have a great friend of mine, Jasub Jarquin. He's a physiotherapist, works at Sungod Physio in Ladner and all around Delta. Helps out the Vancouver Giants a lot as well. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, I'm super pumped, super excited. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I'm glad the day came.
Yeah.
And I know that you've been talking about this studio for a long time, so I'm really pumped to see it, like this whole thing coming together. Yeah. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it feels awesome, right? It's a good vibe in here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember back in like 2021, man, we were just hanging out one day and you said to me, you're like, Blake, like, I'm surprised you don't have a podcast yet. And like that definitely, I always wanted one even before then, just because of how much I listened to Rogan and all these other guys. But that kind of planted the seed, and it's like, oh, like maybe some people will listen. And then like now it's just completely a passion project. If something comes out of this, great. But like, what other opportunity do me and you have to just sit down and talk without interruption? I mean, we might get interrupted by the dogs here, but other than that, this is going to be awesome.
No, totally. And you know, it's kind of crazy to think that like, life circumstances come in such a way that like, okay, certain things happen and finally everything rolls together. And now you've got a pretty sweet space to be able to start that project. So I'm pretty, this is good. This is great. This is great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. Yeah. Okay. Juice. We call Jasub Juice. It's easier. It's a nickname that stuck with him back from volleyball back in grade 8. Has never heard of Alex Hormozi.
Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned that like 2 minutes ago. I don't know who this guy is. And apparently you are compared to him quite a bit.
Compared to? No, but they say I try to rip off his style because he wears the nose strips like religiously every single day. All of his content online, he's always wearing these nose strips to help him breathe. And me with my nose issues over the last 5 years, I've been wearing nose strips like day in, day out for sleeping, for working out. So people would message me. It's like either Courtney makes fun of me like they're the Bior strips, like for exfoliating or whatever, or I'm trying to be like Alex Hormozi. So the picture behind you I just put up, and another realtor sent that to me this week, and he has the exact same one in his office. He got 2 of those. So he actually got a nose strip off me and he put a little nose strip on top of that guy. It's based on a quote from Alex Hormozi saying that, you know, you do enough volume for anything that's going to negate luck, and then you're going to kind of get to where you want to be with your goals.
So question, who wore it first between you and Alex Hormozi?
Oh, that's a tough call. I don't know. We're going to have to go back in the archives for that.
Because you've been wearing strips for a while. Even I don't know how long this...
Dude, 5-6 years, I think. And like, I literally ran the numbers on how much it cost me over those years. And I'm like, I could have just paid for this surgery 5 years ago and saved myself.
Yeah, but surgery, you know, like in the end, I think it's a normal thing to try every single modality before surgery, right?
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully you don't have to go through surgery, right? Sort of thing, right? So yeah, that's interesting. So okay. So tell me more about this Alex Hormozi guy. Why is he so famous or popular?
He's just a huge businessman and pushes out content like nobody else. He's kind of like a younger Gary Vaynerchuk in almost a way. So he started with gym companies. He started working at a gym. He was a personal trainer. Then he kind of gave himself an opportunity how to franchise gyms, came up with a playbook, started realizing he was making good money with that. And then he just started diving into a whole bunch of other businesses. So right now he is the CEO, co-founder of acquisition.com. So it's literally like this company that buys other companies and helps them scale. So just like a serial entrepreneur, but like you're probably the first person I've talked to in the last few years that has never heard of this guy.
I'm deprived. I will say this though, is that you mentioning that he started a gym first to begin with. I remember having a conversation with you like 15 years ago, and you were like, hey, maybe should I do a gym? Like, should I start a gym? Or yeah. And so I know this, I feel like you guys are akin, the same spirit, maybe potentially.
Maybe he's just doing everything about a million times better than I'm doing.
Well, differently.
Definitely. Like, how have you never seen this guy? Oh, where's the nose strip? His first few pictures don't even have him. There's no strip. But yeah, this is Alex Hormozi.
Oh, I've seen this guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I know this guy.
Yeah, classic wearing a tank top, flannel shirt.
Yeah.
And usually a nose strip. There we go. There's one of the nose strip. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I've
He's
seen
got
this guy
all
for
the
sure.
time. Yeah, everybody's seen Alex Hormozi. Jeez, I was like, the last person that didn't know about Alex Hormozi was probably like an 85-year-old female client. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
That's who you're going to compare me to.
Well, no, definitely not comparing you to, but it's just crazy how like you're just we're all focused in our different worlds and our different algorithms and what we're searching up online. Like, you're fascinating, man. Some of the conversations we have about the random stuff that you listen to, like, didn't we talk about coal for half an hour one time? You can learn about.
Yeah, I think there's so many like random interesting things in the world. Like I think we talked about like ketchup for like a while too, and like
It's embarrassing.
my one of my favorite. I just told it again. One of my favorite stories about what is it? The origin of the jack-o'-lantern. I was just telling that story because Halloween was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like interesting things in the world, and I just want to know more.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, I want to know more.
I think your brain's fascinating though. Like, you soak up information so well. Like, you told Courtney and I the Halloween origin story, I think a couple Halloweens ago. And we were just like fascinated how you listen to something once and you can tell the story so in depth and in length. Like, it's pretty incredible.
I don't know. I think it's also like what you're interested in, right? Like if you listen to a YouTube video and you're so engrossed in it, right? And you're like totally into it, like you absorb it a lot better than if you're just kind of like halfway listening through things. It's the same thing with my work and like when I teach, like I feel like when I have like a certain topic that I'm super into, like I feel like I could just blabber on for a long time because I just like really absorb the information. I want to like express that to people. But you know, if it's something I'm not as interested in, like I'm happy to let other people talk.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think that's a big issue with school, right? Like, the topics that you're interested in, you're probably going to excel in. The stuff that you just have no true interest in, like, why are you going to pay attention in that class?
Yeah.
Like, you're just not going to be absorbing information just because you'd rather think about a million other things, do a million other things, listen to some simple bio or some simple math problems.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, it's a really, like, I treat a lot of teachers and kids and students. And the theme I hear a lot is like this sort of thing where teachers will say, like, inevitably some kids just aren't, either they don't have the time to be able to give them interest in a certain topic, or the students feel like the teachers aren't just making them interested in whatever they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so you create this environment where there's the divide between the teachers that want to teach this stuff and the students that want to learn but aren't interested enough to learn in the first place. So like, I think it's a good point. Like when you bring it up, like, I think inevitably the hardest part about teaching or just talking to people is making them feel the same interest in what you're talking about too, right?
Yeah, try to feel that passion through you, try to show your excitement, because so you've been teaching as well as long with your physio practice that you're doing. So you've been teaching at UBC for how many years now as well?
Yeah, like, so I wear a few different hats. I think I started like I was credentialed to teach in 2019, I want to say. Yep. So 6 years now. And also on top of that, I like to teach in services for our clinics. I like to for other clinics too. Yeah. And then I wear a few different hats. I actually just recently I haven't told you this actually. I was just recently, like 2 days ago, nominated into a national organization as the vice president.
Oh,
so that'll be interesting to see how I can kind of more run things from an administrative side of things. But that on top of, working with some teams and things like that, typically occupies a ton of my time.
Yeah. You're a busy man.
Well, but it's things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
great.
For sure. Right. So like, I feel like, without bouncing around too many topics, probably the one thing I'm most interested in beyond all those things though, honestly, is working with athletes, particularly young athletes, like that for sure. Like even just like having conversations and just like trying to figure out what makes some of these young folk tick, sort of thing, right? Is like something I'm totally super, super interested in.
Yeah.
And then when I try and teach, because that's what I'm most interested in, I give it from that lens of like, for example, some of the things I'm teaching, it could just be about hip pathology, for example, or knee pathology, but I want to give it from the lens of that 16-year-old lacrosse player that tore their ACL, or I want to give it from that lens of that, 72-year-old Ironman sort of earlier in their life, and now they still want to be active. Because that to me sounds super cool, and that to me sounds like totally something that I want to emulate in myself. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed, like you and I played sports growing up.
Yeah,
I enjoyed playing sports growing up, and I felt like it gave me a lot of life skills. And if I can impart some element of interest in the other person, in the person I'm working with, in terms of interest in their rehab and interest in their sort of recovery journey, hopefully that'll continue to spawn their own sort of self-growth moving forward.
Yeah, because realistically, anytime somebody's going in for physio, that's like a teaching lesson in itself. You're getting information from them on how the injury happened, what their lifestyle is, and then coming up with solutions. But like, unless the person absorbs what you're kind of telling them through their time with you and they're taking that back into their everyday routine for rehab on their own, then they're just going to see you in a clinic more and more and more, right? Like, you are literally teaching new skills to people every single time they're paying for a visit with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's like a huge pillar of like what I do on a regular basis, the education piece. I'm more of a like sort of classically trained physio. So when I graduated, it was like hands-on, like manual therapy and exercise. And then, if you have some time, you can do some education and you can like maybe do some needling or some taping or something like that. And that approach for me has dramatically shifted as I continue to follow what the literature and what the research suggests. And also as I've just become a little bit more, I've just learned a little bit more as a practitioner. So now, probably of those things, I probably spend way less time doing any manual therapy or hands-on, even honestly, less time doing exercise specific things and more time doing education and talking to people and teaching, right? Yeah. Because I feel like from that perspective, you can impart the most value for the least amount of time. And you only have a set amount of time with someone in a room, for example.
Yeah, you're going to be spending an hour with this person, let's say once a week, twice a week, even 3 times a week. But they're probably going to be doing the rehab on almost a daily basis, right? So if you're not being able to find a way to kind of, pique their interest, get them actual curious about their own body and why things aren't going the way they are, then the session isn't going to be as effective, And manual therapy, needling, all these things are great, but they're really only useful in that moment. It's what you do afterwards with that to gain that strength back and go through that rehab process.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like the way I often describe it in the clinic is you're here for an hour. There's 23 hours of the day. You need to know what makes you better in those other 23 hours. And eventually I tell people up front, I want to kick them out of the clinic.
Yeah.
I want them gone. Right. Yeah. I want them to be, at the point where they can self-manage their own symptoms. And if they take it from the sense of this is a learning opportunity for them, not just for this injury, but for future subsequent injuries, that's the goal. Especially with like sort of the way the trend in the research is going towards musculoskeletal injuries. So we're looking at musculoskeletal injuries from a completely different lens now. Okay. We're looking at it from what was previously something like a painful sort of area, an ankle sprain, a hip flexor injury or a back injury or whatever it would be. And you'd think, okay, well, there's a specific tissue, a disc or a capsule or a ligament or a tendon that was injured. That's what you would look at before. Yeah. Now we're looking at it completely differently, and we're trying to look at more of a holistic approach. So we're trying to figure, okay, well, what factors are going into why someone is injured or what factors are affecting someone's pain experience? And it goes beyond sort of the physical, biological factors and more looking at a psychological factors or sociological factors that affect or modify someone's pain experience. So what we know is, for example, if someone has a physical injury, let's just say a rotator cuff pathology, a shoulder pathology, the physical side of it is, okay, well, how strong, how mobile is the shoulder? How strong, how mobile is the back? How strong and mobile is the neck and all the associated structures? But also, what factors are also influencing that person's pain experience? What about their sleep? Mm-hmm. What about the stress in their lives? What about the nutrition? What are they putting into their body that's creating potentially an inflammatory environment? There's so many other factors, work-life balance, like sociological factors that totally affect someone's pain experience. And that's not something that I'm going to fix by giving someone an exercise.
Yeah, for sure.
So if I'm only addressing 1/4 or half of the issues that they're coming in with, and I'm expecting them to be completely fixed, that's not really a reasonable approach. So it ends up being this education piece. Right?
Yeah, it's so much more lifestyle than people think, right? It's like the food that we put into ourselves and rest are probably a baseline where a lot of people should really look at. Like if you're putting in garbage into your body every single day, 365 days a year, your inflammatory response to inflammation in your body is going to be a lot higher versus somebody, on a fairly healthy diet. And like, even by healthy standards to me, that's kind of like 80-20%. Like I try to be as healthy as I can most of the time, but like I've got a sweet tooth. I love snacking at the end of the night. So like, that's why when I indulge a little bit, for the most part, I'm trying to put in good foods to, you know, it's our fuel. It's our fuel source for a whole body. So it's really the starting point for a lot of people. So that's cool that you're kind of, you know, transitions that. And then sleep. Like if you're recovering from a surgery, an injury, anything, like if you're not getting enough actual rest, you're never going to recover.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And by talking about things like sleep and nutrition and stress and all these other things we're talking about, we're not trying to negate the physical aspect of what's going on here. We're not trying to say the physical side doesn't affect anything, because obviously it's going to play a bit of a role, and we have lots of literature to back that up. But if we don't talk about, you know, the fact that this individual needs recovery, and we just continue to power through, we're creating this environment where all they're doing is thinking that they can push harder and achieve more with pushing harder. And now more than ever before, I'm building in times when I'm not allowing people to come into the clinic, or I'm not allowing people to go work out. I'm trying to actively ask people to start to recover in different ways in their life. So whether it is doing something, there's an athlete that I was working with, and she was very dedicated to her craft, like a super high performance dancer. And she unfortunately underwent an overuse injury. And one of the most important things you need to do is settle things down, right? Recover. And so for her, when she was a little bit apprehensive about, for the first time really in her, 16 years of life, she wasn't supposed to do anything. And it was really troubling for her. And so discussing about, the effectiveness of full long scale recovery, not just physical recovery, but sort of mental and emotional recovery. In her case, that was the first chance he'd had in years to hang out with friends on a weekend, to not have to go to competitions, to be able to sort of catch up on her homework and feel like she's holistically improving herself. And then within a few weeks, she was at a way better place about her injury, as opposed to quite literally in tears a few weeks before that. Right?
Yeah. And probably like learning there's so much more to life than just a craft that she's really dedicated herself to for so long. I find that very hard for a lot of people. They're just so intense on a daily, hourly basis into whatever they're passionate about, especially with sports, because you can just keep practicing, go to the gym, stretch, take care of your homework, and then, go and lift weights, whatever else. So if somebody is throwing such a curveball, it's like, no, you got to give up everything. That's fantastic that they can have that opportunity to like do some other positive things in their life and, fill up their bucket. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't hung out with my friends in 2 years. Oh yeah, I haven't, gone for lunch with my parents or talked to them or hung out with them in a little bit. So I think that's like, it's really a life skill that you're helping these people with out too, man. That's incredible.
So it's interesting. Like you have this poster behind you, the work harder, I should
Nobody
say.
cares, work harder.
Yeah. Nobody cares, work harder. And it's almost like that poster is a bit of an epitome on a lot of my philosophies, not necessarily, the fact that like this phrase of work harder, but if you look at it, there's like 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 14 different work harders on there. And one of them is bolded. And at one of those 14, you've got to work harder and nothing else. And the rest of it, it's always in the background. You're always working harder, but that's not necessarily the primary focus. And I think when you're thinking about holistic sort of recovery from anything, from your fitness journey to your athletic journey to whatever it is, you've got to recognize that you have to fill your cup in multiple different ways, right? As opposed to just doing the same thing. So it's interesting you bring that up. And I think that goes to a lot of ways, right? Like if you have a hobby, for example, for you, in this case, this podcast, right? Yeah. If you, and I don't know, I'll ask you this question. If this dominated every moment of your life moving forward, and it was like the only thing you thought about for 24 straight days, would you enjoy it more, less, or exactly the same?
Probably for a short time, I would really enjoy it just because like it's very cool. Yesterday, finally getting that first episode loaded online into YouTube, into Spotify, and on my way to the gym today, like it was a pretty cool moment. I like typed my name into Spotify and like, there's my podcast. And like, I'm really enjoying it. And you and I both have very, time constraint lifestyles that we're living right now, kind of grinding, building up our business. So it's giving me an opportunity to sit down and talk with the people that I want to have undistracted discussions with. So this is pretty incredible. But yeah, after, 24 days of like, let's say I did like 2 or 3 of these a day, I'm sure I'm going to burn out probably hard and be like, who's next? I don't know what guests I'm going to have on next. Like this is just taking all of my time. So definitely finding balance within other things and being able to have a hobby, have another outlet, have another way to kind of recharge is definitely important.
And that's logical, right? That makes a lot of sense, right? Off the hop, it makes a lot, you're rationalizing that approach, right? So why is it that we have this approach with certain athletes that you have to participate in that sport to the highest extent every single day without recovery? Yeah. Why is it that that approach is still sort of found in some of the culture of certain sports? Whereas, even the professionals, they take recovery, right? You look at the NBA now and we're talking about like load management, right? And there's a reason why load management has been so prevalent in the last number of years, despite the fact that it maybe degrades the quality of the game because you're not seeing the same superstars all the time. These superstars are creating longevity in their careers, and they're probably creating personal happiness, because they're not necessarily pushing themselves to the bone every single time. And that's the part that's kind of missed about the load management part of things, is that what you're saying is that as fans is that I value you entertaining me more than potentially your own personal happiness or your own personal sort of mental and physical and emotional well-being. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's interesting for sure. But like, these are all people. Everyone's people. Right?
We're all just people, man. They're not robots. Like, LeBron James has been out for a few weeks to start the season this year, and I'm sure he's sitting on the sidelines just like killing himself to get back in there. He's probably finding another level of passion that he hasn't seen for a bit, because he's just used to playing, 80 out of the 86 games or 82 games a year, maybe taking a couple off for load management. But like, it can also help them recalibrate their hunger, drive, and appreciation to be in the game and play the sport that they love.
100%. Like, for sure. I think, if you want to compare, if we want to stick on the basketball analogy, Michael Jordan, who was like my idol growing up, right? Yeah. He played so many years. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 years of 82 game seasons. It's wild. Which is crazy, right? Yeah. And he was that unicorn that no matter what, wouldn't miss a game, wouldn't miss a practice.
Flu game
as an example, right?
Yeah.
And no matter what, wouldn't miss anything. But people forget that, maybe people don't forget, but he when he left and retired the first time to go play baseball, it was a different set of hurdles he had to jump. And it was still challenging for him. And and it was a different sort of muscle groups. It was a different mindset. It was a different travel schedule. It was and it provided him with a bit of a buffer. So when he came back, he was just as effective, just as dominant. And then he retired again. And when he retired again, now he was stepped away from the game and stepped away from professional sports. But once again, it provided him with a little bit more fuel so that when he returned, he was able to do 2 more seasons with the Wizards. I think that's a weird sort of roundabout way of saying that was almost his version of load management, despite the fact whether it was honestly on purpose or not on purpose.
Yeah.
He was essentially trying to create this environment in his head where he was like, I can play more if I give myself a chance to recover. And I don't know, maybe in retrospect, that's not exactly what he was doing, but that's how I view it.
No, it's definitely a good way of thinking of it, because I can't imagine athletes back in the day, especially without the technology and the rehab that we have available to these athletes. Like, I was just watching a documentary on Netflix about the different, Team USA, Canada, and France and their Olympic push. Really good documentary. But if you're not taking any time off at all, you're going to get exhausted. You're going to burn out. And that's when you're going to be making stupid injuries as well. And like, it's nice seeing like after one of the games, they're just like, okay, tomorrow, day off. And like, I would have never thought that during an Olympic push, but it's probably a good opportunity for those athletes to go and watch other athletes and then like get inspired from them, meet more people, fill their bucket, and then get back to their craft.
That's why it's virtually impossible to compare between eras of like.
It's super hard. I think it is impossible
because like, I'll give you an example. I watched a game a couple years ago, and it was a playoff game. The Phoenix Suns were playing. They lost the game, and after the game, there was a post online, and they're all lifting a bunch of weights. And it looked like they were angry, and they probably were. They lost a big playoff game, right? Yeah. And people were commenting, "Oh, Kevin Durant, he's angry that he joined this team and blah 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 when he was playing for them." And it really what we're talking about is sports science has indicated that after a game, it's better to lift after the game and then maximize your recovery days. So the following day was completely off.
Okay,
they weren't allowed to touch anything, don't touch any weights. Yeah. They were just supposed to just completely recover. In the 90s, that would never have happened. those guys would have came in with the following day for another practice, another workout, something else along those lines. They wouldn't have had a lift after the game, and then they wouldn't have had the day to recover afterwards. And it would have been just poorer output moving forward, right? So it's really virtually hard, like impossible to compare. It's a fun experiment, but it's virtually impossible to compare because the sports science has completely changed the way that you know, people manage their injuries. And so like when I'm looking at it from a clinical point of view, from a rehab point of view, I'm not doing the same things that I did 15 years ago, because that, you know, the evolution of how we manage athletes and the evolution of how we manage regular people like you and I are completely different, right? And so we need to maximize recovery so we can push harder on our on days. Yeah,
like nowadays athletes are hopping into hyperbaric chamber, they're doing cold plunge, heat therapy, contrast therapy. Back in the day after a game, they're grabbing a 6-pack and playing poker until 4 a.m. Like totally. Completely different life now.
Now you mentioned cold plunge. This is what I want to dive into a little bit. I want to know specifically, because I know you cold plunge. Tell me how often you do it. How long you do it for. And if you had to be objective and take a step back, describe to me what sort of positives and or negatives you've experienced through the whole process.
So it's funny, this year it's been a little bit off, you know, moved twice this year. So that threw a curve into things, just getting it set up properly again. But I'm getting all these like Facebook, Instagram story reminders. It's like 140 days in a row cold plunging. And the biggest positive effect that had on me was just the discipline. It was waking up. And there's always so much resistance into going that thing, man. Like I went in it a few hours ago today and it was fantastic. And it's the first time I've done it post-surgery and it felt great. But yeah, it's the discipline. Like I will literally go downstairs sometimes, look at the cold plunge and just stand there staring at it for like 3 to 5 minutes. Then after a few minutes, I'm like, if you just done this thing, you could already be over and moved on with the rest of your day. So it's like, it's doing the hardest thing. The hardest part of my day is literally jumping in that thing. It's never easy. It's never gotten easier, but the discipline I built up with doing it for like 104, I think I made it like 240 days in a row, going in a cold plunge, or if I was away, it'd be a cold shower. So that would be the biggest benefit. And then other benefits I see is just it's mood. It's a huge mood booster for me. If I take that thing first in the morning, it's going to give me some energy in the day. And I think that ties back into discipline. I'm proud of myself for going at. You know, I've invested in this, a great system with Culture, the Canada-based company that was on Dragon's Den a few years ago. Talk to the owners pretty frequently. They're great people, so I love supporting them. And in recovery sense, like when I was going through some knee issues that we worked with together, it was definitely bringing the pain and the inflammation down in my lower body quite a bit. Negatives, I know you're not supposed to go in after lifting weights. So I hear that if you're training for hypertrophy, strength training, if you're going into cold plunge after that, it's going to blunt some sort of response within your system to build muscle for whatever reason. But man, like I'm always running pretty warm. So like in the summertime, if I've just gone for a jog, like done a 5-10K and I'm hot, or even in the middle of the day, like I'm getting a little lethargic and I actually like want to go cool down and go into the cold plunge, it's just a reset button. And like my brain works better. I'm cooled down literally by temperature and I'm refreshed. I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go. Like I love that aspect of it.
Yeah. I think I love the fact that like when you described it and you're like talking about the benefits, the first thing you brought up was like discipline and maybe a non-physiological response, and mostly just like more of a psychological response, and like how effective that psychological response is. Like you go into a cold plunge, a cold shower, you know, your body, when you get out of there, feels different. And it is almost like a sense of accomplishment. It's almost like you fell into a cold frozen lake, or not frozen, but nearly frozen lake. And then you get out of it. You're like, all right, I made it. I survived, sort of thing. Right. And it's so interesting that like, you know, what you're describing sounds to me like mental resiliency. It's like you're adding 100%. Point. If you're like in a video game character, it's like 1 point extra for mental resiliency. Right. And you start building these sort of mountains of mental resiliency to the point where now you feel like, okay, well, I've cold plunged 34 days in a row. Why can't I train for a half marathon? Why can't I, like, if I can overcome these things that cause, you know, fear and apprehension, I don't think I can do it. I don't know. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's not beneficial. And you say all these things, right? When really it is all the opposite part of those things. And it's almost like cold plunges for probably for myself and probably for a lot of people is more of a psychological hurdle than anything else, right?
Yeah. It's a huge psychological hurdle every single time you're going into that thing. And like, there's a guy in Manitoba that I think he's done it like 1,000+ days in a row. And like, he's documented his journey, and like, it's literally been life-changing for him for so many ways: psychology, health and wellness. And then also like he's gained a huge audience as well. So cold plunging for him has literally changed his life in every single different part of his life, which is very cool. But yeah, I think it's kind of like the gym. The hardest part of the gym for me usually, and I think for most people, is just getting to the gym. If you can do that and get yourself there, then you're literally in a room filled with other like-minded individuals that are all just trying to get a little bit better each day. Or, the gym for a lot of people is psychological. Like, I don't go to the gym. I'm not trying to like set new PRs. I'm not trying to become some like fitness influencer or freak. Like, I'm just trying to get the blood flowing. And every time I leave the gym, I feel better about myself too. And that's like internally and externally. I'm thinking like, okay, I did that. But like, I go to the gym dead tired some of the times, 5:30 in the morning. I leave there with more energy. Like, it's not an energy taker, it's an energy giver. And I think cold plunge is the same thing.
So it sounds to me like what you're describing is it's almost like the journey is almost more valuable than sort of the end stage destination, right? Like,
yeah.
So even like with podcasting, right? Like the journey of setting it up and like overcoming a lot of hurdles and trying to figure out sort of how you're going to manage this from a technical perspective, and, even physically looking at the cameras, trying to figure out if things kind of look well or look appropriate or proper. That's the journey of trying to manage something that is burdensome is like more important than whether you hit that PR or whether you that sort of thing. Right. And so I think it's interesting. Like, it's all about each person's journey in life in terms of happiness, right? Is how I view it. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think some people's journeys are like Michael Jordan, to be like pushing yourself like crazy. And some people's journeys are, hey, I want to be a little more holistic and have a lot of, like LeBron James, use load management, but use it for a long career. No one can, getting back to LeBron, no one can
He'll be playing till he's 60.
Yeah. Well, no one can dispute, like, the longevity is incredible, right? But it's not like it's his longevity is only because he's some sort of super freak athlete. Of course he is, but it's also because of all the contributing factors that his environment he's surrounded himself in to be able to have that longevity. It's pretty challenging to get that, right?
It's a huge support system behind him too, right? Like, it's not just him, it's his friends, it's his family, it's his physio, it's his doctors. It's a huge team that's behind him, helping him accomplish these things.
I saw somewhere too that he is top like 500 in the world in Madden. I don't know if that's true or not.
Really?
Did you see that?
Time for that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like I swear he, like, especially like during like the COVID era and whatnot, he really picked it up quite a bit.
Well, I'm sure, because they were on lockdown, right? Like, they were just literally playing video games and playing basketball and couldn't see anybody else.
But I'm pretty sure if you Googled it, it would say like LeBron James top 500 in the world in Madden. Honestly, Google is a fantastic like for like random facts. You brought up a few minutes ago a fact about 34 days or whatever in a row, or how many days in a row?
I got up to like 180 or 200 days in a row.
200 days in a row.
Yeah, something like that.
So I was randomly Googling the other day. We were talking about this. Did he get there?
Top 100.
Top 100? Wow.
Braun makes top 100 ranked players in Madden 25.
So what does that tell you about basketball or anything in life being just a physical journey? Obviously, it can't just be a physical journey. There's sociological factors that's making him so he can play longer. The psychological factors as well. And so, like, when we approach anything in life, you have to approach it from that lens of like, hey, if I want to look at all aspects of me being successful, I can't just focus on one thing. I can't just work harder, on everything I do. It's got to be one time when it's appropriate, and then allow for proper recovery and allow for, just a proper environment for that to happen.
I think it's so important for people, especially at a young age, to just get good at one thing. Build confidence in that thing, keep working away at it. Because then once you're good at one thing, whether it's, playing the piano or a certain sport, you have some confidence within yourself that you can accomplish other things. And that's what the cold plunge did for me. If I can go into there and do that cold plunge and stay in there for 3 minutes of just weird pain, freezingness, I know that I can tackle the rest of my day fairly easily, because that is very physically and mentally demanding.
I have a bit of a question for you here now.
Yeah.
So if we were to look
this
at
is my podcast, you can ask questions.
All right, one more, and then I'll let you ask us the questions. If we were to look at, if we were to just look at generally speaking, someone in 2025 doing cold plunging, and then we were to look at how, how much the average person or how much a dedicated cold plunger cold plunges, and we were to institute the same environment. We were to say, okay, let's just say in 2015, the same person had access to the same cold plunge, and 2005, same thing. 1995, same thing. If we were to go all the way back to 1975, same thing. Would people in 1975 that had access to the cold plunge, would they cold plunge more than they do now? And I'll explain why I'm asking this question. Because we have this knowledge around the science of it, but there's this sort of debate or conversation about how our culture is changing and being more open to things that are things like cold plunges now than ever before. So do you think that that's the case, that regardless, even if we had access to the same sort of science before, that people would still would cold plunge the same as they do before as they do now?
I think our world has changed so much in the last 20 years. Like, knowledge is just so easily accessible, and we can literally find answers tailored to what answer we want easier than ever. If I want to go look up 10 great reasons to cold plunge every single day, I can find it. If I want to look up 100 reasons not to cold plunge every day, I can find it. So like, we can literally kind of determine our own actions through what we're searching for. And like, for me, I'm always trying to look at both ends of things. I'm like, okay, what are the negative effects of cold plunge versus the benefits, right? So like, I learned through that process that it's probably not the best idea to go on a cold plunge after weightlifting if I'm trying to gain muscle. But yeah, the benefits for me have really outweighed that. So I don't know. I think it's very tough to say. It really comes back to how much information people can find out there. If they knew from close friends, family, relatives that cold plunging was this like miracle drug, which some people call it, which I think is BS. I'm the first person to call that out. It's no miracle to anything, but people now probably with the world and who we can choose to follow and what information we decide to, put into our own brains, then we get to make decisions based on that versus back then. I think, what are we going to do? Go to the library? Like, there's more resistance to find that information on that topic. Like, if we're really curious about something, it is easier than ever to dive into that topic. Whereas like, literally, like if I was just getting interested in cold plunge because I heard it through the grapevine or somebody I met at a meeting and I had to go to the library to look it up, I'm not going to the library. Yeah. I'm not looking it up. I'm not going online and spending thousands of dollars on a cold plunge machine. I'm not going to do it. And the next time I thought about it could be years, right?
There's more barriers, right?
Way more barriers.
The reason why I bring this up specifically is I saw yesterday, I was talking to someone about this. We were talking about the world record for number of push-ups.
Okay.
Right? Consecutive push-ups.
Yeah.
The world record. Well, first off, before we get into the conversation about it, what do you think the world record for the most number of consecutive push-ups
consecutive is? It's up there. I want to say around 1,000.
More.
1,200.
Keep going. You got to go a lot more.
Man, really?
Yeah.
2,600.
Like, my man, you got to go up a lot more.
What are you talking about, dude? Like, what do you even... I've seen some guys recently on like Instagram posting like just like 300 push-ups in a row and stuff like that until I get a sponsorship from from Gymshark or Under Armour and Nike. So, okay, like, what is it, 10K?
It's 10,517.
How long did it take them?
You know what? I was trying to look up. It was by a Japanese fellow in 1980. His name was Minoru Yoshido, I believe his name was. And the reason I bring it up specifically is that we have all had access to push-ups forever, right? Forever. Yet someone in 1980 decided to do 10,517 push-ups. So, and that still holds to this day. Now, mind you, Guinness has changed their rules, and now it's like the quickest amount you can do 1,000 push-ups is the new sort of Guinness World Book of Records. Which, by the way, the new record is, I think it's 19 minutes, a little over 19 minutes to do 1,000 push-ups.
Wow.
So, which is crazy, right? Which is crazy. Now, my question is, if we talked about cold plunge, right, before, right, and how now we know a lot more about the science. Well, what changed specifically with, like, why is it this individual did 10,500 push-ups and yet that's not really something we see now? Is it a cultural thing? Like cold plunges, what I mean is like we've had access to cold plunges forever too.
Yeah,
like
of course.
people have been able to dive into a cold lake forever. But why is it now that cold plunges is it just the science? Is it the culture? Is it the accessibility of information? Is it just the fact that we can see people online and we can see the evidence of it a lot more? Is that what you're thinking?
I do. I think it's also the accessibility of literally having a physical unit in your home. Like if I had to go drive 10, 15, 20 minutes to go and use a cold plunge somewhere else, I'm probably not going to be using it that frequently. Like even moving from the west side of Tawasin to the east side of Tawasin, the barrier for me to get to the gym was a 10 to 15 minute drive each way. So I switched gyms to make that barrier easy for me and go to the gym in 5 minutes instead of 20 minutes.
That's, you know what? So barriers is a huge thing too, because if you think about it, even from my lens of every day I'm in the clinic, one of the pieces that I'm now talking to people about is, okay, well, what are the barriers to you getting better? And I'm having this full blown conversation with people because some people will say, hey, listen, I got 2 kids. I got like 4 hours over the entire week to exercise. So like, is there something you can give me that fits in the 4 hours? Some people are like, hey, they're retired and they have all day, right?
Yeah.
So it's once again finding what specifically works for you. So in this case, like if you are living in California, Arizona, and you have access to a cold plunge, you're never gonna have a lake that you can dunk into, sort of, for example, right? So that's actually kind of a good point you bring up, is like also recognizing the factors, like we were talking before, the factors that affect how you're going through your pain experience. We were talking before an injury. There's Boomer.
He might want out in a couple minutes. We'll let him out. No problem. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like also the barriers and recognize what your own limits are, right? Is a huge part of it too. So like if you have a goal of like, say, for example,
I'll let him out before he starts barking here. You can keep talking.
Yeah, for sure. So like what I was saying is like recognizing your own limitations too also is a key part of it. LeBron James might have recognized a long time ago that for him to be able to beat Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record of most number of points, he needed to have a long career.
Yeah.
And so load management was something that made a lot of sense to him. He recognized his barriers are that people are pushing their bodies harder now than they ever have with their training schedule and whatnot. And I need to make sure I'm doing it from a scientific point of view so that I'm not going to degrade my body in any sort of sense, right? So I think it's interesting for sure. Barriers is a good point you bring up about cold plunges. It's like one of the things that if we had no barriers to cold plunges, even the financial barrier of it, I bet you more people would probably have it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the cool thing is you can always try to at least, get over that mental hurdle and start with cold showers. And I think that's what I did for roughly 600 days. So before I ever got a cold plunge, it was like every single day, because I didn't even want to make the investment. Like it's $6,000 for one of these units, right? So I'm like, I need to prove myself that I will do this every single day before I'm even going to make that investment in that product, right? Because like that's not a small amount of money, right? So anything that I want to invest into, I just wanted to set myself up for success and kind of prove my own theory that I would use it on a daily basis before I even got to that point.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Matt, let's go back to your new role as vice president of this thing.
Yeah.
What is it? Can you talk about it?
Yeah. So I just got a call about it a couple days ago. So it's the Canadian Academy of Musculoskeletal Physical Therapy. Okay. So essentially what it is when you graduate from physio school, right? You're an entry-level graduate. In this case, in Canada, it's an MPT program, master's program. When you graduate, you can go whatever route you want to go. You can go, I want to work in private practice in sports ortho. I want to work in a hospital. I want to work in intensive care. I want to deal with inner ear injuries, vestibular injuries. I want to deal with pelvic floor with women and women's health issues. Yeah. So you start at like, you have this whole plethora, right? And then one of the routes you can take is to sort of become a little bit more acclimated, to become a little bit more specialized, if you want to say the word, in sort of manual therapy and orthopedics. So specifically going through a series of levels through something called the orthopedic division. And then once you go through all these levels, which takes on average, depending on how you want to do it, so let's say 5, 6, 7 years or so, then at the end of it, you become a fellow in that academy, right? Okay. So you get a fellowship status, right? And then when you're a fellow in the status, you can apply to become a member of the Canadian Academy of Musculoskeletal and Manipulative Physical Therapists. So So it's like a credentialing process, a bunch of exams and blah, blah, blah. And then once you get to the end, okay, you're a member of this organization. And this member organization, the reason why it's important is that it's the same standard in Canada as it is in the United States, as it is all across the world. So people that are a member of this Canadian organization have the equivalent membership to the international framework of orthopedic manipulative physical therapists. So you can, if you go to conferences, you're all speaking the same language, everyone's on the same page, right? Beautiful. So part of one of the roles that I'm going to be undertaking is through vice presidency is sort of overseeing Canada's role on the international stage in that sense.
Wow, so that's so cool, man.
It'll be interesting. I'm not sure exactly what I'm getting myself to. I do know, but things always change and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting because I've always wanted to kind of dip my toe in different things. So I've got the teaching part of it. I've got the clinical side of it. I got the administrative side of it from the clinics that we're at. And then also this is from another perspective, just more of a broad scoping sort of how is the profession going to evolve and adapt over the next number of years. So it's a 6-year sort of role. So 2 years, you're vice president, and then you automatically get pushed into the presidential role. And then 2 years in the presidential role, and then you move on to the past president role, which is like passing down some of the responsibilities to the next president.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyways, someone had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think that it'd be good for you to do this role. You should be nominated for this role, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And I honestly I hadn't heard from them, so I thought that it wasn't going to happen. And I was going to reach out to one of my friends and say, "Hey, so I guess this is not happening," sort of thing. Yeah. And then he managed to call me and give me the news. So it'll be interesting to see how this journey kind of goes along here and how sort of it helps me evolve as a physio.
Proud of you, man.
Yeah. It'll be
I love watching your journey, man. Like you've been very inspirational in your dedication to work. And like, I'm even talking about back in high school, you were taking courses for bio and chemistry and summer school. Meanwhile, I'm just playing baseball with my buddies on the all-star team and traveling around. I felt like a bum compared to you. So
I don't know, but you're filling your cup, right?
I'm definitely filling the cup. But yeah, I just really want to say like everything that you've done and your dedication to your craft and like your genuine curiosity, I can still feel your passion for the industry that you're in, which is incredible. And that's so interesting to hear that it's actually like international in the standards and what you guys are talking about, because that's just not the case. Like, if I wanted to go sell real estate in Seattle tomorrow, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. Even if I want to go sell real estate in Alberta, Saskatchewan, anywhere else into the provinces in Canada, I can't go do it. I don't have my license there. Like our license is hyper local. Same thing with the glass business I was with before, right? Like I had my certificate and training here, only in British Columbia, not even across Canada. Mm-hmm. So like, that's so interesting that you guys are actually in a place where you can collaborate and have discussions where you guys have kind of, a set boundaries or guidelines to what you're going to be discussing. And like you said, you're all talking the same language. That's incredible.
Yeah. Like I'll give you an example of a real life example of how, this sort of international sort of federation of orthopedic manipulative physical therapists, how they,
that's a mouthful.
Yeah. How they help sort of create guidelines. So there's a guideline that they've created. IFOMT is the name of the organization. IFOMT has created this guideline on cervical sort of manipulations. And so manipulations being like, you see the videos all online. I'm sure you've seen the videos of like neck adjustments or neck manipulations, high velocity thrusting of the neck and whatnot. Yeah. And they've created a framework about who would be a good candidate, what are the risks, what are the safety sort of precautions, what you need to know about it. And that is the framework for the entire world, essentially, for that. Now, when you graduate from school, like when I went to school, no one taught me any cervical manipulations or any cervical adjustments, right? Because that was not the crux of the framework. They wanted you to be a safe practitioner, and any sort of techniques that have an elevated level of potential risk, they were like, okay, well, you need to take extra courses for this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so in this case now that you've gone through some credentialing, you've taken some courses, you've done some examinations, you've taken some more courses, you've done some more examinations, taken some more courses, you've done more examinations. Once you've gone through that whole process, then they recognize that you have probably at the same aptitude as someone else from the same country. So when they look at the curriculum, they're like, okay, they're all about the same. Now we can create a framework for everybody under this umbrella.
That's beautiful.
Does that mean that a new grad has to follow that framework? Not necessarily, right? Because a new grad can probably just figure out what they're doing and then just manipulate as long as they feel safe and competent to do so. I wouldn't suggest it. And that's what we typically say to our younger physios.
Yeah.
But technically speaking, there's nothing precluding them from doing it, but they don't necessarily have a deep understanding of the framework behind it. They may not, right?
Yeah.
And so when this framework's released, hey, to me, that framework makes a lot of sense, right? Every point on it makes a lot of sense, and we study it, we understand it. Whereas when you come out of school, you're a little, you're fresh, you're green, and you're not necessarily thinking about all those other aspects to cervical manipulation.
Yeah, that's so interesting because like just because somebody knows how to do something doesn't necessarily mean they know what it's really doing and how it's affecting the whole body, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you bring up. I'll give you an example. So I took a course a bunch of years ago. This is like 13 years ago. And it was an interesting course. And it was this physio from the States that was coming up here. And one of the things he wanted to show was someone had asked him, I'm not sure how it came up, but someone said, hey, can you show us how you manipulate the neck, for example?
Yeah.
And he came in and he said, oh, I just turn the head to the side till I feel that sort of somewhere I'm near the end there. Then I turn the neck that way. And then I kind of feel where I'm at the end. And then I just quickly thrust. And he did it. And everyone's like, oh, okay. And he's like, that's it. And then he was describing the non-specific effects of cervical manipulation. What I mean by that is when you crack someone's neck, what we know from the research is that you're not necessarily always cracking the segment you think you're popping, right?
Okay.
You could be above or below. And that may or may not matter because physiologically, you're still getting some positive effects above or below, right? The chain there, and there's some expectation bias and all these sort of things with it, but something is cavitating or something is popping, right? And you don't know exactly where it is. He was saying, well, I don't really know if I'm getting this area or this area or this area, so I'm just going to kind of go in that general area and pop it. And what it opened up with is this Pandora's box where people were thinking, well, it's pretty safe. It's pretty, I can just go anywhere in that neck and manipulate. And I didn't necessarily have the framework behind why I would choose a manipulation or why I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until, you sort of do more courses and you discuss the pros and cons of your approach that even after I finished a lot of these courses and after I finished all of these credentialing processes, I manipulate the neck less now than I probably ever have in a long time because I just kind of pick and choose my spots of who's a good candidate, right?
Yeah, and to dive into manipulation itself, like when you're creating that crack for somebody else, what is that? Like, I think it's like a localized gas releasing endorphins in the area. So it makes sense that, you could crack the neck anywhere and you're going to see some immediate benefits, at least psychologically, but maybe not like long-term.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. There's something called regional interdependence. And what it pretty much means is that you can manipulate or crack even the upper back and still achieve positive symptomatic benefits in the neck. So the idea is that because there is a positive expectation with you manipulating someone, you are creating some sort of inducing some sort of intervention. You're doing something for someone. Generally speaking, even if it's placebo or a bunch of other factors, people will feel better, right? So now when you're thinking about risk reward and safety benefit ratios and things like that, you're thinking, well, why would I introduce something that is potentially problematic for the individual, like manipulating the neck without proper screening, versus I could just do the upper back, which has way less risk profile, and potentially achieve the same positive benefit, right? Which would be in many people's cases to decrease their fear and apprehension around movement. Because I'm not I'm not necessarily manipulating someone or doing manual therapy to fix someone's position or you hear these things about joints being in or joints being out. That's not necessarily driven by the literature. We aren't really great at using our hands to figure out if joints are in or out of position. We're not really consistent or reliable with that, despite the fact that we've tested it so many times with different experts sort of thing, right? So now what we know is that, okay, well, if you can't necessarily tell us with high certainty that a joint is rotated 3 degrees or whatever people want to say, then what are you trying to do? You're trying to, in my opinion, and I think a lot of clinicians' opinion and what the literature sort of suggests now is you're trying to change the way the nervous system feels about movement.
Right.
You're trying to decrease, like I was saying, fear and apprehension around movement.
Yeah.
So you can do that a bunch of ways. Sometimes you can use manual therapy. Sometimes you can use exercise. Sometimes you can do something that calms the nervous system. Like I've had people that say like my back feels a lot looser after a cold plunge. I just had someone not too long ago say that like if they do consistent cold plunges, their back feels looser. Well, what is happening there? There's probably psychological benefits to it. Physiologically, there might be some sort of effect on the nervous system where they're able to relax, right? And that's really maybe what's creating this environment that's nociceptive, that's painful, that's like not necessarily ideal for them, right?
Yeah.
So
you're definitely getting a big endorphin release when you go into cold plunge. That's one thing that the studies show that I'm definitely a firm believer in. You're getting out of that thing and you're kind of riding a high for a few hours.
Yeah. And I think as long as you recognize that is valuable, right? That's not,
sure.
who
doesn't want to feel better?
Yeah. And it's not like, so some people that poo-poo it and say like, oh, well, it's not actually physically fixing my back. Well, what does fixing your back mean? Right? Fixing your back, in my eyes, means that you're able to function more effectively. You're able to feel better. You're able to do more. You're able to feel more confident, resilient in your back. That's what fixing your back means. It doesn't necessarily mean that this one joint is rotated one way or side bent or tilted, or your muscles are in the right spot, because we know we're not consistently good at monitoring that, right?
Yeah. So with your adjustments and your manipulation, you're literally kind of opening somebody's mind is your goal to that they can use their body in like a proper way and kind of just build that trust within themselves. Like neck injuries suck, right? Like if somebody's afraid of moving their neck one way or the other, and you can create a little manipulation, gives them a little bit of endorphin rush in that localized area. They feel a little bit better in that moment. That's probably going to carry on and affect them for, a week, 2 weeks, or years.
Yeah. You're bringing up like a really good point here. It's like, and it doesn't have to do with anything even manipulation based or adjustment based. It's just any manual therapy. You put your hand on somebody, now that person has the opportunity to feel like, okay, well, I feel like you're working on something. You're working with me through something to get but my only concern with that is that I don't want to give the expectation that I'm fixing anybody.
Yeah, right.
Because it should be it takes two to tango. It should be a journey where they're doing their own sort of work along the way, right? Yeah. To help that happen. So yeah, long story short is I think the way I approach all of my manual therapy now is I'm using it as a modality to help people feel more confident and resilient in their movement so that they can continue to sort of achieve the function that they're going towards, right? Yeah. So I will do a little bit of manual therapy. And if that, and there's even approaches I do where people will do manual therapy on themselves with towels and things like that. Yep. And it helps them move more effectively, even in the short term, but long term now, because they're doing these sort of manual therapy approaches on themselves, that's something they can self-manage with. Right. Mm-hmm. That's something that they can work with on their own. Right. Yeah. And I think it's an important distinction from when I started practicing, which was I assumed that manual therapy sort of fixed someone. Right. Like you would put something back in place, or you would stretch out a joint to decrease that tension. And now I'm thinking about it more as manual therapy is one of the pillars that decreases that nervous system sort of excitability and that sort of tension and stress response and compressive sort of response. Yeah. But it's not the only one. And some people have an expectation to get manual therapy every time they come in. And some people have had a negative connotation with manual therapy. So you start doing manual therapy on them. It doesn't matter if you're the best manipulator in the world, that person is not going to enjoy sort of that sort of effect, right?
Yeah, they're stuck in their previous experience and their previous beliefs on how that went. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, is that all based on manipulation and that kind of therapy?
Great question. So I work with chiros. I've worked with chiros in different clinics before and with different teams. So for example, with the Vancouver Giants, one of the teams that I work with, there's some fantastic chiros that work there. And a lot of these chiros, in fact, all the chiros are pretty evidence-based. So what I mean by that is you just follow what the literature says. There are some chiros that have different approaches that aren't necessarily as consistent with the evidence. Yeah. Now, that being said, when I say the evidence, what I mean is like systematic reviews, meta-analysis, like the most available sort of literature that we can find. But evidence can also be sort of your own sort of approach to things. Evidence can be your own sort of your own beliefs can tie into evidence. And people have the misconception that they think that evidence, like anecdotal evidence, isn't evidence. Anecdotal evidence is evidence. Mm-hmm. It's not the highest quality evidence. Mm-hmm. It's not the most, when we compare it to, say, systematic reviews and meta-analysis that look at hundreds of articles and thousands of patients over long periods of time. If I had to weigh the two, I would say anecdotal evidence is way down at the bottom of the pyramid, whereas, your meta-analyses are at the top of the pyramid. But it's not to say that anecdotal evidence isn't valuable. It's just you have to take it for what it's worth, mm-hmm. right? So some chiropractors find some evidence in their approaches which may not be consistent with the literature. And they might say, hey, you know what? It helps my patients I treat. Yeah. And my patients feel a lot of value from it. And that could absolutely be true. But it may not necessarily be true because of the intervention. Specifically, it may be due to a whole bunch of factors that they're doing, right?
Yeah. So it really comes down to the individual as well. Like if you're going to be seeking out help from a chiropractor and you believe it works, it's probably going to work better than somebody that's a skeptic that's kind of being forced to go see one.
Yeah, there's a story I love. I love telling the story especially to young people, and it doesn't have to be manipulation. It can be with needling, and that's usually how I describe it to people, right? Because I'll do dry needling with people, and they'll say, "Oh, does it hurt?" And I'll say, okay, well, let me tell you a story. Okay. So there was a study done, and I don't actually know if there was a study done, so I kind of fib on that, but I heard this from somewhere, and it could be very true. So we'll see how it goes. I just like the story of it. So the study is that somewhere in the South Pacific, in Fiji, let's call it, you had these two groups of people running through a forest pathway. And the first group of people were Westerners, so people like you and I. And the second group of people were indigenous people, so they were native to the land, right? And they were running through this forest pathway, and they're running barefoot. And so as they're running through, the researchers did not say to them was that they put thumbtacks on the forest pathway. And so naturally, when the Westerners are running through that forest pathway and they have to count the number of trees and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, they step on these thumbtacks. And what happens? Well, they elicit a high pain response, right? Obviously, naturally. Then they had the second group of people going through it. And it was indigenous people running through that same forest pathway, and they step on the thumbtacks. And what happens in that situation? Well, they actually reported slightly less levels of pain, but there's lots of reasons for that. Maybe they have thicker soles or thicker plantar fascia because they're used to running barefoot. Yep. For example, there's a lot of reasons for that. So the researchers then showed them the thumbtacks. Said, oh, this is it. They got to feel it. They got to touch it. Oh, it's spiky. It's pointy. It doesn't feel very good. Then they had them do the same run through the forest pathway a second time, except this time they used rubber thumbtacks instead of actual thumbtacks, metal thumbtacks. And so when they ran through the forest pathway, when you would step on the thumbtack, it would fold. It wouldn't hurt. So they had them running through the forest pathway, and the Westerners, they go through that forest pathway and they run over those thumbtacks. And what do they report? Ow, ow, ow. High levels of pain, higher than the first time.
Yeah.
And then what happened to the indigenous people as they ran through the forest pathway? What did they report? Ow, ow, ow. High levels of pain, higher than the first time. Wow. So the whole point is that if you have an expectation that something's going to be painful or something's going to be negative, guess what? Guarantee it's going to be negative.
For sure.
Right? If you have a positive expectation, like you're going to chiropractic and you've had some positive results with neck manipulation, neck adjustments in the past, and you're going in there and they manipulate it and it's a big loud pop, you're going to have this positive association with, hey, maybe this treatment is helpful for me. Now, what I think it's valuable for the clinician is to explain self-management techniques. It's also valuable for the clinician to explain that maybe the effect that they're looking for was not necessarily that they pop something back in, that they're just creating a neurophysiological response in there, that it's feeling better because of sort of chemical reasons more than anything else. Yeah. I think that's really valuable for the clinician to explain. But some people just want that manipulation. And I'm not trying to poo-poo those people, right? But they have a positive expectation that's going to help them. So that's great. That's good for them. And I'm glad that they are feeling better. But I'm always looking for long-term solutions. So even if someone says, hey, you manipulated this joint before, can you do it again? It's going to make me feel a lot better. We have to have discussions on how they can self-manage it. So they're not that person coming back again and again and again, trying to look for the same manipulation or the same needle or the same whatever it is, right? So I think that's really valuable. And it's like a responsibility of the clinician to find solutions that works in the best long-term for that individual.
Yeah, like it's so short term. Like who doesn't love a good back crack or neck adjustment? Like, I mean, you've adjusted my neck a few times over the years. And like when you say you're going to do it, I always get a little stiff and apprehensive because I'm just like, oh, it's my neck. Like what if something goes wrong? But I know that it's going to make me feel better very soon, basically as soon as it's done. I think there's some people out there that think it really is the problem solver. And just because like, people in the past that I've talked to, whether athletes or clients, are like, oh, I'm going to the chiro tomorrow, going to get my back adjusted, and then I'm fixed. I think people really need to start learning like that is a very short-term solution. And there's a bigger problem that's happening there. They can't just go expect that to happen every time and be like, I'm fixed again. Oh, a month later, I'm fixed again. But like, what are you fixed for a day? Like there's no fixing, is there? Yeah.
So I think the inherent word of fixing is like the problem, right? Like we said before, like in my opinion, fixing, what does fixing mean? Yeah. Fixing means improving function, moving better, moving with less pain, maybe getting better sleep, having less stress, feeling like you're a more competent member of society. There's all these things that fixing means, but people just say fixing, right? Yeah. So, I think it's almost like that holistic sense we were talking about before. It goes back to the nobody cares, work harder thing is if you look at that whole line of that poster board behind you, and you only focus on the one adjustment or manipulation that your chiro or your physio did with you, and you negate all the other effects, the cold plunge, the fact that you've been dedicated towards certain things, the fact that you feel comfortable from so many different points of view, socially, psychologically, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's going to play a big role as well. And so for you to poo-poo all those other things and just say, no, that one practitioner fixed me, you're kind of missing the boat, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that's the education piece. Like, you look on Instagram and like my algorithm always shows like these like really loud sort of cracks and things like that. And people like feeling like, oh, they get all out of relief, right?
Yeah.
But what they don't describe is the fact that, a lot of these manipulations, they have a microphone right by the individual, like right attached, like a lapel, like right in that spot.
Yeah.
And so if you manipulate, it's going to sound really loud and it's going to sound really satisfying, when in actuality, they might have actually been quite quiet. So what happens when that one individual goes into a clinic and they get a small, quiet manipulation? Do they think it's not as effective?
Right. Are they literally setting themselves up for less success because of the amount of noise that happened during that adjustment?
Yeah. And I think a lot of like people, and this falls into a bit of like, predatory practices and whatnot, saying like people, giving the impression that loud manipulations are better manipulations. They'll often like follow it up in a really kind of sort of subtle way. They'll say like, oh, that was a good one. Or, that was great, or something along those lines, if it was happened to be really loud.
Yeah.
And so 100%. If you come into the clinic and then you don't get a loud one, that comment may not be the same thing, but they might not say that was a good one, when it could have been exactly the same manipulation as someone else, right?
Yeah.
So that's the hard part. And that is the part that, social media has a tough time sort of figuring out, is what part of it is marketing and what part of it is like, clout and all that sort of stuff, and what part of it is actually making people better, right? So I know, and that kind of dives into like regulation and like how much are you regulating practitioners online? Mm-hmm. Like, I'll give you a question here real quick, and then I'll talk to you about how it kind of impacts my practice. Yeah. If there was a review board, an ethics board, or something along those lines, that were to look at the way that you post online, and they were to say, don't really think that's ethical practices, Blake, I'm going to fine you, or I'm going to suspend your license, or something along those lines, how would you feel about that?
We do have a governing body, BCFSA, that does look at what we post. And we, like, within the code of conduct for realtors, we're not allowed to speak poorly of other realtors in forums, or like, you really shouldn't speak poorly of your other colleagues in any way, shape, or form. But like, posting it on social media is definitely not something positive. And we can kind of work around that in a way. Like, we definitely share situations that we wish as realtors, a completion day, a possession day. Like, when I had a circumstance this year for a $3 million property in Tawasin, and possession day was an absolute nightmare. They did not follow the contract, what they said they would do in terms of cleaning the house. And so I was on social media and I was like, what a nightmare, but I never blamed anybody. I just said the situation. So I think it's good that we have some rules and regulations, and people that are governing and giving us input back. But like, I feel like if it's not too harmful, and you're just trying to kind of educate on like, this is the situation it should be like. And I'm in the opposite way. When I have a possession day and I'm representing a buyer and we go there and it's perfectly clean, the keys are organized, the communication was great, I'm raving about that realtor too. So I like to show both sides of the spectrum, the good and the bad, in business and in real estate. Mm-hmm.
So I sorry, that's my fault. I didn't know that you guys had a review. That's great. That's fantastic. And the reason I kind of brought it up is I've seen other realtors not necessarily bash, but sort of speak negatively about certain parts of sort of the presentation of a home or something like that. I've seen it all on, and particularly in the States. So I'm not sure if it's a little different up here.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah,
for sure.
but what I'm getting at is that, regulation is valuable because you're presenting proper information. Yeah. Now, the issue becomes when you're now presenting health information or medical information or anything along those lines that pertains to someone's well-being. It's a little bit more murky, right? Mm-hmm. Because especially if the science around it is a little bit in the gray area, right? So now you have this sort of war online between people that have differing points of view and people that have posts about some sort of article about something specific. online, and then you have people saying, well, that article doesn't necessarily say what it wants you to say, or that article has biases, or that article was researched by people that were conflicted. They have bias for some particular reason, right? So that makes it maybe potentially a little bit more challenging, right? And then on top of that too, there are regulations as to what you can post, but the regulations are also kind of murky. So it says you have to be professional, but it doesn't necessarily say, like, what does that mean? Yeah. Right. You have to have some sort of evidence to back up what you're saying. And what if the evidence is low quality evidence, but it's still backing up what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Still evidence.
Yeah. It's still evidence. Right. So, on one hand, I talk about how anecdotal evidence is still evidence, but, it's maybe if you post something about like, hey, this one realtor, for example, did not present this property the way I wanted to present it, but that realtor won some awards for 42 straight years, that they were the top sort of realtor in terms of whatever it would be. Does that negate the fact that one time they didn't present the property properly? You know what I mean? Like it's a bit challenging from that sense, because it sounds to me like one person can say, well, why are you bashing one time I made a mistake when you're negating the fact that 42 straight years I haven't made any mistake? And then the other perspective is, well, you're still presenting the evidence that one time they made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. An example is still an example. It shouldn't just be thrown out the window, right? It's same with success stories for you and your clients. Just, a manipulation can work a lot better on one person versus somebody else. It just doesn't have the same effect for them. For realtors, like the people that are getting very popular and influential on YouTube, like Steve Saretsky, he's a vlogger in the Vancouver real estate market, great guy. And he has a huge following on YouTube, and he has to have a big asterisk on all of his videos. This is not financial advice. Mm-hmm. Seek professional financial advice from somebody else. Cause most of the time he's doing like a recap of the week and any breaking news in Canadian economy, finance, and then in real estate, of course, as well. So that disclaimer probably came from somebody, taking his advice at some point in time, and that advice didn't go the right way, or coming up with the predictions like, oh, if I say mortgage rates are 100% going down in 2 weeks, nobody refinance their property right now, wait 2 weeks. And then somebody's taken that advice, and then my information that I've given to those people is wrong. Like there's probably going to be some sort of complaint. So there's definitely a lot of asterisks and disclaimers that we have to do as professionals, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's valuable because what you're saying is, hey, I don't have all the answers. I'm presenting some information for you. I'm going to try to be as unbiased with this information as I can be, but I want you to know something. That's super, super valuable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you necessarily get that with these 5 or 6 second or 10-second clips on Instagram of someone manipulating or adjusting someone's back or someone's neck, because there's a lot of nuance there, right? And so that's why my practice, getting back to what we're talking about, my practice has changed to being like way more education based. Because if I ask someone that I'm seeing, hey, what do you know about this particular sort of condition? What do you know about this particular type of treatment? Maybe they saw a chiropractor or a physiotherapist that manipulated their neck before. Was that positive for you? How did you feel about that? That's very specific to that individual, and you get to understand their biases towards that. And that conversation takes time and going back and forth and establishing some trust there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like it's so interesting. Like I've also admired you in the clinic working with other people and seeing how good of a relationship you've built with so many of your clients. Like, a lot, and a lot of their lifestyle, right? Like just because this guy's running an ultra marathon, like you're still asking him about his other social weekend plans to see what else he's doing. And something I kind of wanted to get back into was, with the athletes that you're working with that get a significant injury, how are you building their confidence back up to get out playing lacrosse, playing volleyball, basketball, baseball, hockey? Like, how are you building up that confidence for them? Because I know, like, when I had a pretty decent injury on my ankle right after high school and I was trying to get back into baseball, like I had very, very little confidence on that ankle. And I was scared to steal a base for the first time just because pushing off with all my force. And it's already a split second decision that you have to make. Like, oh, the pitcher's making a move to home plate, time for me to go. And I was afraid of really testing it. So how are you working with your clients to get that person back on the ice as quickly as possible, but in a safe manner, of course, too?
So first off, I'm super appreciative of the fact that you talk about how when you've observed me talking to other people or talking to other clients, other athletes, and knowing about their lives. That's something I quite frankly take a lot of pride in. I want to know about that individual because it's going to tailor the way I treat them, but also because I am building a rapport with them.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to establish some trust with them. And that's really, really valuable because if someone has some deep-seated apprehension or fear towards returning back to a certain sport, a certain position in a certain timeline, I need to know that. That's going to completely influence the way that we manage this injury moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's really challenging. There's lots of people that I can give examples for. There's this one individual athlete, and she's had a series of different injuries. She had a surgery in her knee. That surgery didn't work out super great for her. She was worked really hard, but there was still something blocking her knee. So then she needed a second surgery. Yeah. And so naturally her confidence is waning because now she's needed Absolutely. 2 surgeries. And so the way that I've approached those sort of situations is the first thing I really like to do, well, beyond getting to know the person is getting to know what makes that person motivated. That's super, super, super valuable to me. So in this individual case, is it that they wanted to go play NCAA somewhere? Is it that they just want to have fun at the clinic? Is it that they just want to have less pain? Like, what is motivating that individual to keep coming consistently and to keep pushing themselves? Number one. Number two is understanding their specific work-life schedule and understanding what sort of environment they have at home. Do they have the right supports at home? Do they have the parents that are super supportive, or do they have parents that are working out with them? Do they have friends that want to go to the gym with them? Do they have teachers that are supportive of them missing school so they can take a recovery day if they need a mental health day or something along those lines? All these things are going to play a factor into whether that individual comes in with motivation that day to work out in the clinic and to run through a bunch of things, or if that person comes in and they just don't want to be there, they want to go back home.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it is understanding who that individual is and what makes them tick and what their motivation is. On top of that too, I think the other part of it that's really valuable is a lot of athletes in particular, especially if they're high performance athletes, they see their friends, their teammates, and they're playing in the nationals or they're playing in some sort of high performance competition. And meanwhile, they're on crutches and things like that. And that can be really disheartening.
Absolutely. So, like that's got to be one of the hardest things. Like you've worked so hard for so long and then you're gonna be missing that big tournament, provincials, nationals, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the other thing that I really try to employ is empathy, right? I want to be there and I want to be there for that individual. I want to root for them. I want to be a cheerleader for them from that sense. And it sounds kind of weird to say, but I root for all my athletes like so much.
Yeah, for sure.
I want them, like they come in the clinic and I want them to be like, all right, let's go. Let's do this sort of thing. Right. Because it is such a hard journey. And I want to be an adult in their lives. A lot of these are kids, right? I want to be an adult in their lives that's pushing them to try to motivate themselves to be a little bit better each and every day. Sort of because it is the case that they may not have teammates or friends that are able to have that journey with them because they're all playing in the games. They've maybe never had an injury before. Yeah. So it's really kind of hard. And I think that, you saying that I know a lot about people's lives, I think you kind of have to.
For sure.
Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing, right, at what these people do. And so from that perspective, this one young athlete I'm referring to, there was lots of times when I would build in a block. I'd be like, hey, this month, when are you going to take a vacation from physio? And they're like, oh, what do you mean? Well, I don't, you tell me when you're going to take a vacation from physio. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, you come back and talk to me next time. We're going to bring it up first thing next time. They come back the next time. Hey, so when are you going to take a vacation from physio? And knowing full well, that's in their best interest. Yeah. And then eventually gets to the point where they're like, hey, you know what? Thank you for talking about that. Cause I went to Whistler, or I went to whatever it is with some friends and I feel very rejuvenated. And then the other piece that I do all the time with athletes to keep them on track and keep them motivated, you have to do this as a clinician personally, is be objective, right? So what I mean by that is before periodically or before they take a break, you test. Yeah. You test how strong they are, how much their vertical capacity, what their hopping capacity is, how much mobility they have, whatever you want to test. And then when they return, when they are improved from not having been to physio, they're improved, they're jumping higher, they're stronger, they have more mobility just because they allowed themselves proper recovery. That's the buy-in right there, right? And now that individual knows, hey, this person is looking out for me by making it clear that I don't have to live at the clinic multiple times per week to make progress. I can dip my toe into recovery on a regular basis and feel a lot better and stronger, more resilient because of it.
Yeah. So I love the skills and the tools that you guys have at the clinic too, like that that force plate that you guys have.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that a little bit to people? But like when I was going through some knee tendonitis and stuff, like we were on that thing once a month for a few months and seeing improvement. It's just so encouraging, especially with an athlete. Like you want to make progress. So like having a small number, like let's say my vert went from, 20 inches to 21 inches in a few months, like seeing that number, I think it gives people energy as well to know that they're taking all the right steps, and then seeing a real physical, hard evidence-based example that they are making progress.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point. So force plates are these tools. You stand on these plates. And it will tell you a bunch of factors about how you're distributing load between the two legs, whether it's symmetrical or not, the reaction time forces on the when you're jumping or hopping or changing direction on them. It tells you about sort of weight distribution, one side versus the other. And it gives us some really key sort of insight into whether or not that individual is properly loading through that limb or not, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't tell us necessarily why they're improperly loading through the limb, but we can infer using our clinical reasoning. Say, for example, that individual isn't strong enough in their quads. When they come down to the bottom of a squat, for example, they might shy away from that side, right? Mm-hmm. And so, as we get someone stronger, they can maybe see a little bit of their quad girth improving, and they're like, I think I'm getting a little bit stronger. And then they look at the quad symmetry on certain testing, and they say, hey, you know what? I'm catching a lot more. I'm catching up. And now I'm a lot more symmetrical. And what I find now more than ever before is that, especially high performance athletes, they crave it. They want it. They want to make sure, really want to see that their progress is being made, right? So they're asking about specific numbers. What was my numbers before? And so now I, like in the clinic, I have like Excel sheets up and whatnot, and I track people's progress, and there's graphs and things like that, so people can see the differences between where they need to be and where they're at. That's just one tool. We have other things like load cells and things like that test your peak strength, and for example. Mm-hmm. And the idea here is that some people, they don't care about that, and that's maybe something just for me, but some people, they live off of that, right? And so whatever taps into that individual is most effective, because especially like some people, I often ask, hey, do you want to test today? Right? And if they've, for example, had a really bad last 2 or 3 weeks of training, and they're like, and they some people are like, I don't know if I want to test today, right? Then I have to evaluate whether it's going to be probably in their best interest to push them through testing that they don't want to do.
Yeah, if they're already not feeling great about how things have gone for the past few weeks, who knows what kind of true effort they're going to pull out of themselves when they're doing these tests, right?
100%. And a lot of the efforts are designed at being max effort tests.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you want to figure out the peak load that they can handle on that limb, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a really important thing that you say that you pick and choose your spots about testing. But that's not the whole thing. Like, I don't just hang my hat on testing. Like, they test really well, because there's also other ways that you can objectively figure out whether or not someone is making progress. For example, there's psychometric measures. Mm-hmm. So you can ask about someone's confidence. Following an ACL reconstruction, for example, there's a whole bunch of questionnaires you can fill out. And the questionnaires ask you about things like pivoting, cutting, changing direction, running in a straight line, sprinting, stopping on a dime, all these sort of things that you can do. And then when people start thinking about where they're at relative to this stuff, it really informs you, oh, this person doesn't really feel confident decelerating at all. Mm-hmm. Or this person feels super confident, yet I'm looking at them objectively and they are not that good. They're overconfident. Yeah. And that's really valuable for me too, because that's apprehensive to me. If someone feels like they're so good, but I'm looking at them thinking, oh, we still aren't necessarily there for what would make me more comfortable, then that's an education piece as well, right?
Yeah, because I think when you're so young and you're an athlete, you just want to get back to the playing field no matter what it is. Mm-hmm. So you're almost telling yourself, no, I'm good. I'm 100%. I'm even 90%. Like, I need to get back out there. But if you have some other metrics and you as their physio can kind of guide them, being like, you know what, like, you're not ready. We should take a bit more time before you get back into full play or full practice. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, because over the years, probably a lot of athletes have gone back into the sport probably too soon and then re-injured.
So yeah, and I think also another thing, and this is a really good point, like the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is you spend all these months potentially, right, rehabilitating from an injury, and you go back in and your confidence is high. You go back in maybe too early potentially, and you re-aggravate it. Mm-hmm. And now your confidence is completely shot, not just for a short bit, but what I find is for a long time. So usually what I want to do is I want to make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. And I really want to make sure that I'm explaining to them that I'm being extra picky for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to say someone's cleared. That's the easy part. Oh, you're cleared. Go back. Looks good. It's harder that despite the fact that they want to return back, no matter everything they want to turn back, it's harder to pull them back because you have objective evidence.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
You can't just pull them back because you're like, oh no, I don't think you're ready. You have to have some reasoning behind it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it could be psychological reasoning. It could be physical reasoning. It could be a whole host of factors. Right. And it could be conditioning. So I often explain to people too, like, hey, physically you're doing fantastically well in terms of your strength measures, but you're not going to be ready to return to sport in a month because you're not in good enough shape.
Yeah.
So, this is something we need to fix. Otherwise, the coach is going to be putting you in for a quarter of the game because you're not in shape. Like that doesn't work. Right.
Yeah. You might not help the team out as much as you think you will if you're just coming back in for a short time.
Yeah. So I think putting yourself in their shoes and sort of wanting them to not just return to sport and just like make it, but return to sport and be super successful. Those are the people that I feel like I'm really, really, really wanting them to succeed. And then on top of that too, is like, if they happen to return back to their first game or whatever it is, I also want to go to that first game.
Yeah. You want to see it for sure.
I want to see it. I want to give them a fist bump. I want to be there cheering because that's the whole story. That's the whole thing. Right. So like, there's athletes that for example, they compete, other places of the country. And when they come into town to maybe play against UBC or play against UFE or play against some of these other sort of universities nearby, I want to go there. Yeah. I want to observe them. I want to watch them. I want to be like, hey, great, like really good job. And the whole point is to put it into full circle that the reason I'm there is not necessarily because of me. It's because of all the work that they put in there that I'm still cheering them on for all the work that they put in.
That's awesome, man. So would you say then some of your favorite clients might be the Vancouver Giants because they're in the clinic working with you, and then how active are you still like with going to the games? Are you still going to most of the games?
I was there last night.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is like to a certain extent. Yeah, for sure. Like the Giants are
easier to track and you can be there watching them on a day-to-day basis pretty much.
There's something unique about working with a team like the Vancouver Giants in that when you see them on a regular basis, their victories sort of become your victories a little bit, and their losses sort of become their losses become your losses. You're part of this sort of whole environment where you're trying to tug the boat all in the same direction, right? Mm-hmm. And that's on a team scale, but I wouldn't necessarily say that. Like I really enjoy working for the Giants, but just because there's a player on the Giants means that they're better. No, I wouldn't say that, right? I really enjoy working with all sorts of athletes, mm-hmm. and typically athletes that they really have a high motivation to return back. Those athletes are awesome to work with. Yeah. But they aren't my like necessarily the only athletes I'll work with. In fact, some of the most proudest moments of my career have been when I've worked with athletes that have so much fear and apprehension about returning back and are super unsure of themselves and get to the point where not only do they get back, but they're successful in their return. Mm-hmm. And even some of these individuals have come back after their career is done and said, hey, I went back and played. I played a few seasons, but now I want to pivot to this sport, and now I want to do something differently, but I know I need to get there some way. And you can help coach them through that next sort of journey. Right. So I think those are some of the people that I really enjoy working with, is the people that were really apprehensive, like I said, about trying to return back to the same level of activity. You look at ACL tears, which I'm a huge fan of. ACL tears. I treat a lot of ACLs. And one of the facts that is pretty sad to me is about 76% of ACL tears don't return to sport to the same capacity they did before their tear. That's like 3/4. That is crazy to me.
That's wild.
Right? That's crazy. So, only a quarter of these athletes, this is a study from a little while back, so it's changed a little bit, but for me to have someone go through 9 to 12 months of rehab and not return to sport in the same capacity they did before, that's really disappointing. And a huge chunk of these athletes don't even return to any sort of level of competitive sport to begin with. Right. So that's really sad. And a lot of that is, I think that these people were discouraged, and having a team of practitioners or a physio or a team of people around them that want to lift them up in a pretty dark time, especially for like a teenage kid that's never been injured before, I think is hugely valuable. And we think about the impact on the healthcare system in general. You want someone that is going to be 30 years from now, 40 years from now, going to continue to be active. They're less burdensome on the healthcare system. And also they're just generally, that's something they're resilient for. they managed to get over the biggest hurdle, one of the biggest hurdles of their lives.
Yeah.
Their young lives, right? And so you're molding a young athlete to eventually become a young adult.
Yeah.
Right. So those are, so as much as the Giants, definitely a lot of the players do fall in that realm, it doesn't have to be necessarily them. It can be anyone that has the same high level of motivation to better themselves.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like you're a physio, that's your title, but you're honestly, from my perspective and everything that we've talked about today and how I've seen you over the years, you're more of a coach. Like you're a friend, a coach, a mentor. And it takes me back and, right after high school and I went back there and I helped coach the volleyball and the basketball team. And honestly, some of the most rewarding times when you see, a grade 8 start playing basketball and like they're going through a growth spurt, their coordination's garbage, and you see them get a little bit better and a little bit better. And then, they're building more confidence in the sport and outside of their life. Like it's such a special journey to be a part of. And like, I can see how much you care about you guys and you really, relish in seeing them get better, get healthy, and then succeed for longer after that too. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah. I it's interesting you bring up the idea of coach, and like coaches, probably apropos, right? In many respects, I think coaching is part of physiotherapy, but, I think it's great. You look at strength and conditioning coaches, for example, S&C coaches who they're primarily in the gym, right? But S&C coaches now have evolved to help manage people through hardship, through injuries. And that's a great thing because you have to essentially have a bigger tool belt, right? So physios initially started primarily being in the clinic, but nowadays I spend way more time on the field. Just the other day, I was with a lacrosse athlete at the lacrosse box, and we were in there working on some fundamental skills as they return back to sport. I think it's really valuable for the physio or the coach, whatever you want to say, is to not necessarily be with them at the start of their journey when they're just on crutches and with the big brace on, to eventually doing more harder progressions in the gym, to eventually getting on the field or getting on the court or getting on wherever the environment is, and then continuing that journey along with them. So that you're not just a coach for part of their journey, you're coaching them throughout their entire journey. And then also the other key piece is, I think it's super, super valuable, is not like making it seem like you have all the answers, because there's going to be a whole bunch of people that can contribute positively to that person's return or recovery journey or whatever they're going through. And so allowing those people to enter the team and being really open to other people helping out is super, super valuable. Whereas earlier in my career, if someone said, hey, I should go see this person or go see that person, can I go see this practitioner? And in my head, I'm thinking, well, if they see that practitioner at the same time they're seeing me, how do I know what made them better? Was it me or was it them? And, maybe I should take a scientific approach to this and say, well, just see me and then we'll see how much improvement you make, and then see them and see how much improvement you make. That was sort of my approach before. My approach has kind of evolved over time now is if they feel like it's going to be valuable for them, I want to do my best work with them to sort of amalgamate the different services we provide. And if it's the case that they're not making the type of progress I want to make, well, we should discuss reasons why that might be the case.
Right.
As opposed to just saying, no, I have all the answers. Because I definitely do not.
Yeah. Especially just giving it the benefit of the doubt that they can go see somebody else, maybe gain some sort of knowledge or something that helps them on their journey in recovery and getting back out into playing the sport.
I think getting back to what we're talking about in terms of manipulations too, is that, if I'm going to refer someone to, if someone's going to say, hey, should I go see this practitioner, whatever it is, right? And they say, well, that person said that the reason why my knee hurts is because my L3-4 is out or something along those lines. That kind of goes against the ethos of what a lot of my practice is based on in terms of, self-management, resilience, not focusing on like the small little details that are likely non-specific and not sort of helpful for us. And so, it's really important in that sense to have a solid rapport with that individual.
Yeah.
To try and be careful in the way you approach that subject.
Yeah. You can't just push things onto people all the time, right? Because you can overwhelm somebody with a whole bunch of information. And if they're literally just meeting you for the first time and you're just pushing these new tactics, ways, or reasons why they got hurt, reasons why they can stay healthy in the future, if there's just information overload, you're not going to build that rapport and they're not going to trust you. And they're probably not going to listen to half the stuff that you're telling them. Yeah.
And I think there's a few strategies that you can there's a few strategies you can do for that. So for example, this happens all the time. Oh, my family doctor said that I had patellofemoral pain, for example, right? My kneecap. And
thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, exactly. And they come in, they're like, oh, I have patellofemoral pain. And I'm looking at it thinking, this is absolutely not patellofemoral pain. This is something completely different. A patellar tendinopathy, whatever it could be, a ligamentous tear, something like that. I could say, oh, your doctor's totally wrong. Or I could approach it differently. I could say, hey, I think that it could be patellofemoral pain, but the reason why I'm going away from that is the following. I think that it's actually more likely something a little bit similar, but different. This. And so I'm not poo-pooing what they're saying. And I'm also spending more time explaining to them. And I can say like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. And a lot of times I get confused with this patellofemoral pain, but it's not because of the following. And so you try to work in harmony with the other practitioners too. Yeah. And in doing so, you're probably, they're not losing all their trust for the other people that they see, their family doctor, their other chiro, their other massage therapist, whatever it is, their coach, but you're still explaining it in such a way that makes sense to them.
And I think that comes with all the experience that you have as well, right? Like it's a lot easier for somebody to accept like, okay, that's great that your doctor said this, but like I've worked with other people in the past that had similar diagnoses from their doctor. We've worked with them, and then over time, we learned it was actually X, Y, or Z. And one of the most interesting things that I've learned from working with you with hip pain and knee pain and back pain is that like deferred pain, like that's a real thing. Like I complained about my hip to you like back in 2018, and you're like, no, it's your back. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah. So that's another thing that is why trust is super, super important. So if you have, say, arm pain, or like you're describing hip pain, one of the primary jobs as part of your initial assessment when you're getting some information about the person is, does the story make sense? Mm-hmm. Should they have hip pain based on what's going on here? Does it make sense for them to do they follow the right pattern? And a lot of what you're doing in the initial assessment is something called clinical pattern recognition, which pretty much means, do they follow does it make sense? Yeah. And if it doesn't make sense, you start thinking, well, this doesn't make sense for a hip. It might make sense for a back instead. And so you start going into more of your examination to try and rule in whether there's referred pain from the spine. Yeah. And that's a really common thing. That's what we teach is, getting back to those levels and the sort of orthopedic division levels, is we teach about how do we differentiate between referred pain and pain at the periphery. So into your arms, into your legs, or whether it's coming from something central, right? If you don't have any trust whatsoever at all, how are you supposed to say, oh, you know what, like your other practitioner was completely wrong? And I don't think you should say that either. For sure. But you just need to say it in such a way that is conducive to what you're trying to get at there, right? You're trying to help the individual. You're not trying to create resentment between the different practitioners. Yeah,
if you're just starting with negativity and sticking with that, it's not going to build trust. And you're probably then they're probably just going to be skeptic about you as well. It's like, well, if you're saying this guy's wrong, well, why do I think that you're going to be right?
Yeah. And I think, like, don't get me wrong, like there's some people that I've even just relatively recently, there's someone that saw a practitioner that I didn't necessarily agree with his treatment philosophy. And rather than say, oh, he's completely wrong or anything like that, I asked questions about, so what exactly did he say about that? Why did he feel that was the case? And after asking some more questions, I just realized it was a complete misinterpretation. The guy did not say they was just their interpretation of what actually happened. So even in that case, it really helped me quite a bit to get more of an understanding fundamentally what that individual thinks about their pain experience. Yeah. And it might've just been one word that someone else said or something along those lines. And now that person grasped onto it. Right. Yeah, right. And then, so now for you to sort of peel that back, you don't have to do it right away. You can do it over a period of time. Hey, remember you had that conversation with so-and-so where they said that you might have this. As we've been going through the last number of weeks, I've been noticing that it's not necessarily trending that way. It's trending a little different way. And I think it's a good thing because we've been kind of approaching it as if it's A or B. And now we're finding it's probably more B than A. Right. Yeah. So, and even the whole time I was leaning towards B. Right. Yeah.
Getting as much information as you can possibly get. Because honestly, man, there's even sometimes I come and visit you and we discuss a million things during that hour and a half treatment, and I'm going to forget a ton. Mm-hmm. So I think, if somebody's already frustrated dealing with an injury that's keeping them out of their normal routine and they're playing, then they're going to see a doctor. They don't want to be there in the first place. Like they just want to be out playing their sport. So our minds might not be in the right place to accept and interpret that information in the right way. And then when they go to then explain what happened with Dr. A to you as their, secondary person, it could be completely different than the actual conversation, right?
I also think that the one con to having a lot of education is the fact that you can easily do education overload. And when we talk,
for sure.
like there's so much, you absorb most of it, to be clear. You absorb 90, probably 95% of it. But what if I want you to absorb 100% of it, right? That's really hard, right? And so what tools can I institute to make it so that you absorb more of it, right? And so in that case, I've been trying to fiddle around with using AI a lot more. So I use AI for transcription. So it listens to our conversations, creates notes for me. And at the end of the session, essentially at the end of the session, it writes all the notes out and I email it to you. And that's all the conversation we had the whole time. So you can review it.
Yeah.
And then one up to that is using different AI tools to create a podcast, funny enough. Yeah. So using essentially like Google's Gemini sort of AI software to create a podcast about what happened during that session, what the results were, what the education pieces are. And then I send it to them so they can listen to it on the drive home. So now they finish their session. A lot of information. It's been over an hour sort of thing, right? And they're driving home. They can listen to it again, or the next day they can listen to it. And I think that's really another really valuable piece is that we can use and leverage technology to help us sort of become more effective clinicians. Yeah. We don't necessarily have to shy away from it. The same thing I tell people all the time, we work on a concept on the field. Hey, I want you to cut this way. I want you to have a lower risk cut profile, for example. And then, they're like, okay, it makes sense. And if I don't think that they're actually truly grasping it, I will take a video with their phone of how they're cutting. And then I will tell them how to put that into some sort of AI software and have the AI software explain why that cutting strategy is not effective for them. Mm-hmm. And that's something they can do on their own. And then what happens if they're on the field or on the court on their own and they're taking videos of themselves, they institute the same thing. Now they're self-managing once again, right? Yeah. And so that's an example of when AI is effective, assuming the AI is correct. Right?
Yeah.
It has to be correct in the first place. And so I think that, you have to monitor that sort of stuff. You have to make sure that you're not just giving them bogus information. But this is a way that I think my practice has evolved over the years. And obviously 15 years ago, we didn't have that capacity, but it's evolved from being more like, how can I manage that? How can this individual in 2025 help manage themselves moving forward?
That's so cool. Like that literally plays right into what my brokerage is doing in the real estate industry. So I'm a realtor, and above me, we have a managing broker at our real estate office that they take a separate course that's super in depth into like basically like worst case scenario playbook and then come up with solutions for problems. Right. So my brokerage has a way now that I can log into my system on my phone, on my laptop, on my iPad. And if I'm having a situation with one of my files and I need to call my managing broker, our whole conversation is going to be recorded and transcripted with AI. So then we can go back to that because somebody like, especially new agents, we have a million questions, right? So you could literally be on the phone call with your managing broker and talking about 10 things you've never dealt with before. You're not going to remember all of those things perfectly at the end of those conversations because it's usually pretty intense. You're trying to get information on 10 new things that you've never thought of or discussed before in your life. Now there's a way that you can just go and review that again and be like, oh, I have the answers. And then it's just streamlining the whole process. That young rookie agent or experienced agent, I have questions from time to time, is going to be able to just circle back to that instead of having to then take valuable time from the managing broker. They have a resource tool that can then guide them for success in the future. Like, oh, I had this situation on this other file 3 years ago. I can just go back and we can literally use our voice assistant in our brokerage. Hey, Leo, can you pull up the file at 123 Banana Street and then look at the notes from that file? Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think you're talking about leveraging technology to make your life and everyone's lives more effective. You're talking about not spending time on mundane tasks and making like that to me is totally the future. And a lot of people are apprehensive about technology because they think that for some reason it's going to detract from their lives. Right. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all AI is good, right? All the time. Right. But I'm saying that we can use it to help ourselves do our business better. Right. To be quite honest with you. Now, that being said, this kind of reminds me a bit of how AI can be not so great. There was an email we received from our college. So we have a college that protects the public, right? So the College of Healthcare Professionals of BC. And so essentially what it is if someone has a complaint or if someone has any sort of issue with any profession, our college manages physios, speech and language pathologists, audiologists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go into that complaint. Well, one of the concerns was that there's been, some concerns about people misusing AI for example, and having sort of misleading evidence that they're quoting on AI. And our association recently received an email from 2 different physios, and they send it out to everybody saying, hey, we received emails from 2 separate physios saying, hey, can you find this one article for us? Or, hey, I want to get access to this article. Well, it turns out that article was completely made out of thin air. It's not a real article. It's made out of AI. And it had been cited like hundreds of times by different researchers.
Oh, geez.
And so this is a concern, is that now, in theory, if you want to put on your conspiratorial hat, you could have McDonald's saying, hey, Big Macs, cure cancer, and creating some sort of AI article that sort of proves your claim.
Yeah.
And then it looks real, except it's an artificial university and the names of the individuals, the researchers are made up and the whole thing, but it looks real.
Yeah.
Right? And how do you combat that? And in this new age, how do you combat someone saying, well, I have research, a systematic review, a meta-analysis, the best quality evidence ever, saying that this is this one particular intervention or this one particular thing is the most effective, right? How do you combat that, right? Like, because it may not be true. And so now you're asking researchers to do more vetting than they ever had before, which is appropriate, but you're also asking clinicians and regular lay people, like, for me to look up an article, I have to make sure that article is real. I have to do a lot of deep diving into it. And that's really challenging for the average person to do when they only have 5-10 minutes to research something or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, like I was doing a video for my real estate side of things on my YouTube channel a couple weeks ago about the Ladner detached housing market and the Tsawwassen detached housing market, and then interest rates and everything else with kind of the economy right now. And I used AI to give me some ideas of topics to talk about, and I found some flaws right away. And then I type back into ChatGPT. I'm like, this information's old. That's not correct. This is actually like the percentage of absorption rate, which is how many sales are happening in a month versus how many listings there are in the market. And then it's just like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Like that's how it goes.
This is the problem with AI right now, is it's very affirmative. So if you say something, oh yeah, you're right. And then you say, no, actually I was wrong. This is the correct answer. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And so that's where things like where people go online or use AI tools to confirm their biases, like a confirmation bias. They say like, oh, is it true that BC is more, has a higher GDP than Ontario? Like, give me reasons why. And it says, oh, GDP, British Columbia is way more than Ontario. Well, obviously that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one concern with AI, and then finding ways to spot it in advance is really the next tool, right? So what I've been trying to research is, how do I spot AI if I'm reading something online, or if, for example, I'm scrolling on Instagram or whatever it is, and there's some comments made there. I've learned some tools like watching for M dashes. Do you know what M dashes are?
No.
So M dashes are a normal dash, right? Is like, say it's a half long, and M dash is a prolonged dash.
Yeah, like a double.
Yeah, double dash.
Yeah.
And AI, that's like the signature for AI.
They love doing that, because sometimes I get it help writing up listing descriptions. Like I'll type something up myself and I'm like, hey, can you make this a little bit more appealing to this demographic, or really focus on the amenities at this clubhouse? And those double dashes, man, like that is such a thing.
Yeah. So do you know how to actually type out a double dash, an M dash?
Just do it twice?
No, because there's a space between.
Oh.
So to actually create an M dash, you have to use a Windows short key. I think it's like Windows Shift 15515. That creates so no one's going to do that. Who's going to do that, right?
No.
And in Mac, it's something very similar. It's actually quite like not easy. So the idea is, obviously this was created by AI, and there's some other ways that AI creates their responses, and these bots create their responses where like they create these lists, and they structure the list in a certain way, and it's always super structured, overly structured, unlike a human would structure it, right? So there's these things that you can do to combat AI online. And that's part of like, this whole journey of us trying to figure out the next sort of era is like, how are we going to best manage each of our professions, making sure that we're giving the proper amount of information.
Yeah. Like one thing I like about ChatGPT now is if I'm asking it for real estate information to spit out to me on whatever, whether it's in BC or Ontario, it's starting to cite where it's pulling that information from. So I'm just going to go and click that. And then if it's like from the Ontario government or the British Columbia Real Estate Association or the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board or the Fraser Valley Board, and it's right from their website, then I know it's a credible source. If it's from even another realtor's website, who knows if that blog post from them was all through AI. So it's like, it really always comes back to the individual. They got to do their own research as well. You can't just take all this information that's spat out to you in 3 seconds and say it's all perfectly correct, because people make mistakes in conversation too. Like, I could have said something to you earlier and like, who knows if it was actually perfect. Like, people make mistakes too. So we can't expect AI to be 100% perfect all the time.
No, you're right. And that is how I believe that's how that issue with the made up articles came about. Was they had gone on and clicked the link, and the link sent them somewhere, and they're like, oh, but they couldn't find the article or something like that. It was like the link was broken or something like that. So that's the hard part. And then that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about anecdotal evidence versus high quality evidence. So, if you have some sort of meta-analysis that's published, but it's fake, and you're like, well, how do they publish this meta-analysis when we're just starting to discover certain things about it, right? So you had messaged me a little while ago, and we had like a really brief conversation about peptides. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, this is definitely something that I know is emerging. It's been talked about for a long time, but it's, to go through these clinical trials takes forever, sort of thing. Right. And having a conversation with a physician colleague of mine, he was like, well, we know about it, but like most of what we know is like when we talk about peptides like insulin, or we know about like human growth hormone type of peptides. We don't, they're all, BPC sort of 157, like we know some of these things, but we don't know exactly 100% all about them. Right. And so like for me, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at these systematic reviews and meta-analyses. And then I load up one and I was like, okay, it's from the University of whatever. And it didn't quite like resonate. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And when you actually read it and review it, you realize there's a lot of nuance with it, right? It's kind of challenging, for sure. Right? Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point you bring up in terms of like, I'm going to ask you this. How do you think, like, you're obviously very experienced in your role. If there was a new realtor first year coming out and they don't have years and years of experience of looking at the market, and they're just going to look at AI, like it's got to be challenging for a younger realtor to kind of navigate and give the proper information to their clients, isn't it? Or
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go there. Like, I've never really used AI until the last few months, and it's really just for creating content into kind of short bullet points. It's very easy as a realtor to go and get the hard data that you need. Like, within my realtor portal that I sign into 3, 4, 5 times a day, there's a stats section. So if I want to get the hard data, it's really only 3 to 5 minute in research for me to get all the relevant information that I'm looking for. So yesterday I was doing a market analysis on a condo in North Delta. So simple search, bunch of criteria, type it into best fit that condo, 2 bed, 2 bath, 2 parking, between 700 square feet to 900 square feet. And then I can look at all the current listings that are close fit to it and all the past sales for the last 3 months or a year. And then I take that information, then I just spit it out into my own. I don't think realtors should be using AI to find market data, but just as a search tool to go on top of the other tools that we already have that we know are going to be facts.
Yeah. You're bringing it's a good thing that you're saying, because like essentially you're bringing up a lot of uncertainty. What if the client does that and like, hey, no, I pumped it into AI. My property should be worth 1.6 and you're telling me it's only worth 1.4.
Yeah.
How are you going to refute that? You can say, well, listen, I log into this portal every day. I've looked it up. Yep. Like I'm the expert here. And what if you're new to the business and new to the profession? And now you're like, man, I thought it was going to be worth 1.4. They're saying it should be worth 1.6. Like maybe they're right, sort of thing. Right. So I think it's challenging for sure.
It is challenging, but it always comes up to us and our curiosity to not be lazy. Like, go and do the research from the publications that are 100% factual, that has been established for years. Like, what's it for physio? Like the College of
College and Health. Well, like college is like what protects the public, right? But
okay.
But there's an association that physios can ask questions. We have librarians, so we want a research question. We say, hey, give me all the research on this thing, and it's that person's job to look up all the research online and send it to you as one of their roles and say, hey, this is the following reviews on that particular subject, right? And then on top of that, association also sends us like really periodic, hey, this is the newest research about this, this, and this, and this, because the profession has to be evidence-based. If you are not necessarily following the evidence, then essentially you're doing some of your clients potentially a disservice.
Absolutely.
By not necessarily giving them the best quality information. And if the movement we're doing is like self-management, you're giving them management scenarios from a long time ago, it's not as ideal, right?
Yeah. And going back to like young realtors, honestly, one of the best ways to become an expert is just go spend time looking at these graphs and charts, because there's a whole different bunch of ways you can manipulate them, hyper localize them, literally like into Boundary Bay here versus Tawasin. Oh, take those stats compared to all of Vancouver. Take those stats compared to all of British Columbia. Compare BC to Ontario. So I feel so confident when I'm going into a listing presentation just because I've done all the research. I know all the numbers. I know the comparable sales, active listings, the history, the supply and demand side of things, which, controls most markets. So it's just do the research and you will become an expert because you spent that extra time in it. And it's not always super time consuming. Like if somebody's asking me for advice or an opinion on real estate in Chilliwack, that's not my focus. That's not my expertise, but I can become very knowledgeable about that market in about an hour to 2 hours and give them some good insight into what's going on there.
I think that, and naturally, like I don't know the personal lives of a lot of realtors, but I've treated realtors in the past. And something that I've noticed is a bit unique on your part that I've noticed is that you do that research. You do go the extra mile for a lot, like so many things. And if you don't know the answer, you're like, I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna get back to you. I'm gonna figure it out. Right. And that's really like, that's the same thing I tell to the younger physios that I work with. It's like, if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Yeah. You don't have to know every answer that exists, but you better do your damnedest to go figure it out.
Honestly, man, that is like the best piece of advice my dad ever gave me when I got into real estate. I think we're at an open house on Central Ave in Ladner. And like, just, it was my first open house ever as a licensed realtor. We did it together. He's like, hey, go turn the lights on, open up all the blinds. And then he's like, I was like, what do I do if I don't know the answer to something? He's like, you tell them you don't know that answer, but you're going to find out as fast as you can and get them that information needed. And like, I've just carried that through my entire life. Like there's no point in BSing through anything, because people can either sense that you don't know the answer or you're going to look like an idiot and say the wrong thing.
Yeah. I do the same thing to this day. Like there was an athlete that I treated last week and I was like, she's like, can I return to sport? I've got a tournament in 10 days. Can I return to sport? And I thought, wow, it's going to be, it's like a 50-50 toss up, because it could go one of two ways in the next sort of 48, 72 hours. So I told her and her mom, hey, I don't know if you're going to be able to go back, but tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you on Tuesday afternoon, which is today. I'm going to call you on Tuesday afternoon and I'm going to touch base with how you're doing and how you've progressed in the last little bit. And then we're going to make a determination whether or not this is going to be successful or not. So it's part of and they're totally okay with that.
Yeah.
Cause you're following up with them and you're like, the key is not, I think if I'm hearing you right, the key is not saying you don't know the answer, but you'll get back to them, but actually getting back to them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You got to get that information and follow up.
Like it's kind of reminds me of that Seinfeld episode, the taking reservations. The key is keeping the reservation, sort of thing, not just taking the reservation sort of thing. Right. The key is with that whole thing is making sure that you get back to them about that specific detail, because that is something that is specific to them. They want to know a specific question. And that's what they're hiring you for. The same thing with physio. If you have a specific question to that individual, you get back to them and that automatically establishes rapport and establishes trust.
They feel heard. They respect you for getting back to them. They're making a connection with you. It's a whole bunch of positive things that are working in the relationship favor versus you trying to BS your way through something and then never having that person trust you ever again.
Yeah, I think that's another piece that as I've evolved over time in my practice is and this is a bit controversial, maybe one could say, because I'm certainly not I understand if people don't want to do this, but there's been certain times when I've been at home or I've been somewhere else that I'm not in the clinic. And I've thought, oh, hey, you know what? I should follow up with this person. I should call this person. And some people will wait until they come to the clinic, and that's totally fair. And they'll call them the next day. But sometimes I just want to follow up with somebody. And so I'll call them with my personal phone, which is maybe not ideal. Some people don't believe that they should believe that there should be more of a barrier there. But inherently, I just want to make sure that that person's doing okay. Yeah. That person's doing fine, right? So it's not out of like a business. It's not like I'm trying to garner more business. I just generally care about the person. Yep. And I don't want to wait tomorrow to ask them. I want to ask them today about how they're doing.
If you're coming from a position of empathy and actual care for the person, reach out to them. Like what's the real harm? Be like, hey, just sitting here watching football, thought about you, wanted to check in, make sure things are going okay with you, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that at all, dude. I think that's fantastic.
There's a physio I worked with, awesome physio, he's a good friend of mine. When I started working with him, the one thing I noticed that he did really well was that people that dropped off. So these are people that you treat for a while and then all of a sudden they kind of disappear off the face of the earth. Yeah. People that dropped off, he would call them and say, hey, it's so-and-so from the clinic. I noticed that you haven't booked a follow-up. I was just wondering how things are going. And he's a very kind individual. And the person inevitably, you always have the fear they're going to be like, oh, I didn't like my treatment or I wasn't getting better or whatever it is.
Yeah,
and 99% of the time, maybe not 99, but like huge chunk of the time, it was like, oh, thank you for calling me. I've been meaning to call in, like this and this got in the way or this and this happened, or I'm actually out of town because something came up in an emergency. Majority of the time people want to get better and they want to continue that journey with you. It's just that you have this fear in your head, right? So, I mean, I that's something that I want to do more is like just check in with people a little bit more, especially working in South Delta. Like it's such a tight knit community out here that if you don't check in with them, you're going to see them at Save on Foods anyways. You're going to see them somewhere else anyways.
Yeah.
Right?
You might run into them later and then you're going to ask them the question then. Yeah. But like, that's so cool. And like, it's not like you guys aren't busy enough. Like your business is packed all the time. So making that phone call from that other physio, checking in with that client, I think that they'll be able to feel that they're literally just getting that phone call out of, a little bit of concern and care for them to make sure that they're moving in the right direction, right? And seeing if they're in okay. There's
a phrase, and I don't know how I completely, I feel okay about it, but it kind of matches sort of a little bit of what I like to do. It's this phrase about like, you don't want returning clients, you want referring clients. Yeah. Right. And so the idea is that you don't want necessarily the same person coming again and again and again, but you want to empower that individual to have some self-management skills and be able to manage their whatever their journey is. And then be like, hey, this person will help you manage your own journey. Right. Yeah. And refer you. Right. I like the idea of that, but also at the same time, I don't want it to come off as being like, oh, I want a bunch of referring clients. Like you said, the clinic is really busy. Yeah. And what I really want more than anything else is to be for everyone that I work with and all my colleagues to be really happy with what they're doing. Right. Yeah. And I to a fault, sometimes I almost feel like sometimes I really want to make sure that everybody is as happy as possible in the clinic. And I don't know if there's such a thing in realty because I'm not sure, but in the clinic side, it's almost like to a fault. I'll give you some examples. So I've been for a long time trying to change the clinic schedule to make everybody happy. So when I say the clinic schedule, I want this person working with this person, this working with these hours and blah, 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 the whole thing. And you don't even want to know how many hours I spent trying to modify that schedule. Yeah. That wasn't really great for me. It was kind of draining for me. Yeah. And I was working really, really hard for very little effectiveness. Some people would only make a 5% improvement in their quality at work to switch this hour to this hour or something like that. Yeah. But I was spending so much time at it that I think that's one of the things that is, which is why some people like a barrier between you following up with people and whatnot is that you want to create separation for yourself, right? So that you're not, and also just so you're not keeping things like they have your cell phone, but creating separation so that you're not necessarily all day, all the time thinking about someone else's rehabilitation, someone else's recovery. Yeah. If I'm coaching someone to be like, hey, you need to take a break. Why am I that person that now isn't taking a break and calling them on a Tuesday when I'm supposed to be off work? Right. Sort of thing. Right. So I have to listen to myself from that sense too. Yeah. And we definitely have some similar situations in real estate, right? Like let's say I'm the listing agent on a property and I get a showing request for tomorrow at noon and they're like, oh, it's not really the ideal time. I'll always try to work as hard as I can for my clients too, to work around their schedule. But let's say we're 6 months on the market. This buyer does not need to sell anything. This is the only time that works into their schedule because they're literally leaving work at 11:30 to come see your home and one other's at 12 and 12:30. The 12:30 is already booked. We all got to work together. Nobody's ever going to be perfectly happy, I think, in any industry. And like, there's only so many hours in the day. Your clients can come see you when they can, and then hopefully they get the practitioner that they can and their availability and their schedules. But we all got to be a little bit flexible, man. It's funny when we're talking here, we're starting to create more similarities between our two professions. When you look at them on paper, like, oh no, these two professions, yeah, completely different. Yeah. But actually, when you're talking about it, we were talking about people business. Yeah, right? It's all about people. Every single business out there really just comes down to the people. And like, I think we both come from a place of care and compassion, and all we want to do is see our people
be successful. And like earlier on, you were mentioning, you know, you get somebody back into the playing field soon. And a similar situation for me is seeing some clients of mine, you know, buy their first condo 5 years ago. And then now they just bought a fully detached house. And like, I feel like a proud father in that moment. I'm so happy for these people to see that transaction. And they're not going to be a client for another 25 years, which is sad, but I'm just so freaking excited for those people. So it's very cool. So definitely more similarities between the two.
Yeah. Like how does it feel when someone like hasn't talked to you in 10 years and is like, hey, Blake, hey, I'm selling, like, you know, you helped us out before. Like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of crazy to think they're like, oh yeah, thanks for thinking of me, sort of thing. Right. But
yeah, I get goosebumps.
Yeah. It's so cool, isn't it?
It's really cool.
And I don't think that we should take that for granted. Like that's obviously there's an impression made there, right? Like there's obviously something lasting, right? To the point where they were not just satisfied, but they're like more than satisfied, to the point where they're like, I wouldn't go any other way. Yeah. Right. And we see that in lots of professions. We see that with electricians. We see that with lots of different services provided out there, where you're going to go back to the same dentist or whatever, because it just, they provide you with that service that you want. Right.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't say it's only exclusive to like our profession, sort of thing. Right. Not. But at the same time, like it's also quite an accomplishment, right? From your end. It's a little different, maybe a little different for me, because sometimes people are forced almost through injury.
But there's other businesses, there's other companies they can go to. It's not like there's not another physiotherapy clinic in Ladner or Tsawwassen. They could go seek out somebody new. So yeah, I think over the years, the more I get repeat clients, the more I am in a position to really appreciate it as well. Yeah.
Is there what's the sort of the longest standing, if that's such a thing, client you've had?
I mean, selling real estate for 14 years, who's the longest standing client? I mean, when I first got into the business, I sold a family friend of mine, I sold their grandparents' property in Abbotsford. Then I got to sell their daughter into her first condo. And now I'm selling that family's house. Their listing's going live tomorrow. So that's literally being a 14-year client. Yeah. Literally like being a month into real estate to literally a new listing with them going live this week. So I guess they're my longest clients.
Yeah. People's realtor.
You know, man. Dude, let's wrap it up on that note. It's been 2 hours, man.
Crazy. Yeah. Time flies.
It's been a lot of fun. I feel like we could chop it up for another 3-4 hours. Yeah. And talk about totally. A lot more stuff. So thanks so much for coming on, dude. I really appreciate it. And let's get at it another time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Sweet, man.
Sweet. Awesome.
Dude, so much fun.
Crazy.
Holy shit.
Man, time flies. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I know.